call the meeting to order. I believe it's 6 o'clock. The first item on the agenda is to approve the agenda. Can I get a motion to approve the agenda as it is?
Can I motion to move the public comment to the first public comment to after the architect presentation?
Rogan, let's get a motion to approve the agenda, then we'll amend the agenda.
Okay.
Is that right?
Yep.
And can I get a second to
I'll
amend
second.
the agenda? Okay.
Can you tell me who approved it, or who motioned it, who approved it, please?
Rogan was the first, and Kelsey, thank you, was the second. Any discussion on that? Rogan?
I think it's good for the public to get time to hear some things before putting forth their comments.
So where, can I ask you to be specific, Rogan? You'd like to amend the agenda to include the second public comment, or just move the public comment?
Just move the first one forward.
Okay. And move it to, specifically,
after 7. Or after
7A, B, or
Maybe.
after 7B.
after the frequently asked questions as well?
Yeah.
Okay. So, Dawn, do you have that, an agenda?
Wants to move forward to where after?
Number 4 to after 7B, prior to 7C, which would be prior to the board's discussion of the presentation, right?
Sure.
Okay. Kelsey, would you agree with that as a seconder?
Sure.
Any discussion on that, folks? No. Okay. I should ask Randy real quick before I call vote. Are Cato and Truex Collins here?
Yes.
So if we start the presentation sooner.
Yep.
That would
David,
be
you're
fine.
ready. David and Kyle, you're ready when you're ready? Yeah.
Okay, great. So all in favor in approving the agenda as amended, please say aye.
Aye.
Does anybody, any nays?
Did you
Nay.
seek board member?
David is a nay. Anybody else online? If there's a nay online, I think I can see Jim, and that's it. I'm going to say David is the only nay. So the agenda as amended has been approved. The next order of business would be to appoint new board member from Danby for the Danby vacancy. Can we make a motion to appoint Alex Wild, who would be a returning board member for our vacancy?
Make that motion.
Ben's going to make the motion. And who's the
Second.
second?
Second.
John Wilson will be our second. Any discussion?
Welcome back.
Yeah.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Alex. All in favor of approving Alex Wild as the representative from DNB on the Green Board, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No, that passes unanimously. Let's see, before we go into board goals, I did just want to make a comment for the public, and our board has kind of been made aware of this, but I wanted to take a minute to acknowledge the inappropriate detention of Superintendent Chavaria of the Winooski School District this week by the Customs and Border Patrol in Texas, as he and his husband were returning to the United States from visiting their family out of the country. Our board, as well as the SBA and a number of other boards and districts around the state, have reached out to him, just offering their support. We all kind of see this as a clear violation of his human and civil and constitutional rights as an American citizen, and we're just kind of starting to see this, and I think we can do better. And that's it. Review the board goals. If everyone wants to take a minute, in your packet you'll see our board goals. We'll take a moment to look over those. Okay, and I think it's okay to move on to item 6, which is actually now item 5, our consent agenda, which includes minutes and hiring. I just want to make a note. A few days ago, we noticed there was a discrepancy in the minutes with the voting for, I can't remember what item it is now, but that had been resolved before the meeting. In the packet, it was, in the minutes, it was item 8. So that has been amended. The names were unanimous on that. So I want to make sure that you all know that that's been corrected. Can I get a motion to approve the consent agenda? A mover, Ken? John, did you say
I'll
you
second it, yeah.
Thank you, John. Ben Freeman and John Wilson. Any further discussion on that? Great. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? Jim was in
No,
aye.
sorry,
Yeah.
Jim's on. I was
So I
just,
think it was unanimous.
it was me.
Great. Okay, item, what is now 6, school reconfiguration. I just want to give the public, again, a little bit of an insight. This is a little bit different than where you might have anticipated this going. And I like to write my notes down, so please don't be offended if I'm not looking at you while I'm talking. I want to clarify a few points. At our last board meeting, we began discussing a transition plan to implement during the building phase of a regional middle school, working under the assumption that a regional middle school project would go forward. While the conversation was robust, it was hard for us to reach an agreement. So the motion to move forward was withdrawn. In response, Dr. Lowe reached out for discussions to several board members to discuss their thoughts on that meeting. What became clear is that in order to decide on a transition plan, it was important to gain more clarity from the board as to which direction we wanted to move in regards to our district reconfiguration for both the middle school and elementary level students, in order to ensure the transition plan aligned with the final outcome. So rather than continue the discussion on the transition plan tonight, we're moving towards a final, potentially a final plan for reconfiguration for discussion. Tonight we'll be looking at a presentation from the architects of Truex Collins, reviewing cost analysis and programming capacities within our school. The goal is for the board to be able to make a clear distinction as to what path forward we would like to see regarding our elementary schools. We will also hear from Kyle Murphy from Cato, sharing early schematics and layout concepts for an initial review. We will not be taking action on these concepts, rather they're there to consider as an update for the current thinking and progress that is being made as we move into the next phase of planning. Additionally, before we move into a motion regarding our final TNG configuration, the board will be discussing some of the materials being produced to help ensure the public is as informed as possible and understands the goals and the process we've undertaken to get to the point where we as a board have decided that a regional middle school would be the best option for our students, especially as we're looking towards the future. After that, I believe we will have the public comment as we move to that section, and then we as a board will discuss. With that, I think I'd like to hand over to Randy and the architects.
Is this on? Do you know how? Hello.
Yes, got it.
Okay, thanks, Melanie. So we do have 2 presentations. The first is from Truex Collins, and David has the ability to share his screen. Okay. So David, I'll turn it over to you in a second to get us started. Really the work that has been done in the last couple of months relates to cost analysis, a more detailed analysis of operating costs as we look forward in space use. So that's the information that's going to be provided here today. And David will get started. I think I'll turn it over to you to start, David, and then if I need to jump in, I will. But we'll provide information to everybody about how we made some decisions around what to focus on and why, and then share the information. So I'll turn it over to you.
Great. Can everybody hear me okay? Is that a thumbs up? Can I,
April, can
people
you
in
turn that
the
on?
gymnasium can hear me as well? Great.
Okay, I think
All
we're
right,
good.
well, thank you, everyone. I'm Dave Epstein with Truax Collins. Um, Randy, do I need to share my screen, or will the presentation be shared from
No,
your
you're
end?
gonna share your screen, right? Because you gave him rights to do that.
Okay. Let me do that then.
Do we want to give folks a minute? If anybody from this side of the room wants to hop up and move to this side of the room where the screen is, it might be a little bit easier. The screen is kind of
Okay,
set up for the board.
Okay, everybody see the screen?
Yes. Well,
Okay.
moving if they can't.
Let me just do one thing.
Can you see up
Okay, so we were just going to give an update as to where we are in the planning process. As you'll recall, let me go back one. So when we last met in March, there was the board had selected 3 options to move forward with for further study. I believe they were A1, B1, and H1. You know, what's happened, and you'll see what we're going to present, is we've taken a closer look at the A options and the B options, and we haven't looked at the H option yet. And I'll explain why, just so everybody, I don't want people to be scratching their heads going, why not? So, so what you'll see is, you know, we've looked at option A in more depth, which is where we have 3 K through 5 elementary schools, Dorset, Floodbrook, and Manchester, and a 6 through 8 middle school. So one of the things about A1 was that it contemplated a 7-8 middle school, and because the middle school study committee had looked long and hard at what was the best arrangement for the middle school and had come to the conclusion of grades 6 through 8, A1 was less favorable, and A was more favorable because it had the 6 through 8 model and kept the 3 schools open. So that was, you know, the decision that was made, and that's what we looked at. And then in regard to H1 had a 5 through 8, contemplated all of the pre-K through 4 students going to MEMS, and then a 5 through 8 middle school. And that was also unfavorable because of the middle school study committee's recommendation that the district explore 6 through 8 middle school. The other version of H was to close Dorset and Floodbrook. If you'll remember, the options H included closing both Dorset, Floodbrook, and Courier and Sunderland. And so it consolidated basically all the students onto all the pre-K through 5 students to Manchester Elementary, which we've since, as we've looked at it, we would require an addition. So the building is large enough to accommodate pre-K through 5. You'll see in option B, which is this next one. So this is the one where Floodbrook remains open, and the pre-K through 5, the remainder in the district, go to Manchester. But when we got into H, when we closed Floodbrook in the same configuration, now we had, if the 6 through 8 middle school was on site, then there was not enough room. Well, in either case, there wasn't enough room in the existing building for all of those students. So that was considered unfavorable as well. So no, it's not to say that we can't look at all these options, but it is time and money. So, the decision that was given to us in the direction was to focus on A and B. And in both of these cases, the middle school could either be built on the MEM site, or it could be built on a new site. And the site search is currently underway. Randy's been contacting different land. First we identified available pieces of land, and then Randy's been contacting them and to see if they're willing to talk. And so far, there's been no hits, no viable pieces that have popped up, but we're still looking. But we're very interested in understanding whether we can build a middle school on the MEM site, because it would be less expensive from the standpoint you wouldn't have the site acquisition costs, and you wouldn't have the land development costs, it would consolidate transportation. But there is, one of the things is we're looking at wetlands delineation on the MEM site. We had a property boundary survey done, so we're doing all this due diligence to make sure that we have the room to put a new middle school on that site, or to test whether it really works. And that's what Kyle and his team are doing. They're doing test layouts on the site to see if it fits. Can you get enough? We know we can fit the building, but can we get enough parking? Can we maintain enough open space for playing fields? And that that may come down to a judgment call about whether it may not be a binary yes no. It may be like, well, there's too much sacrifice in terms of losing playing fields, or we may all look at it and say, wow, great job, Kyle, it all fits perfectly. So that's underway, and Kyle will talk a little bit more about that. The next slide was just a summary of where we were. So option 0 is basically the status quo, and that is modeled in the cost model as if you weren't taking out any bonds to take care of the building. So you're just paying as you go. Option 0, which is also, with the bond, you'll see the next line. What that is what would the cost savings be if you took out a bond to pay for all of it tomorrow? Because you would be paying for all of it today's dollars. You wouldn't have the cost escalation over the next 30 years. And you can see it's a substantial savings, almost 10%. Now, option A is where the two schools are closed and there's a new middle school built. And you can see that it's the same ballpark savings in terms of, and you're getting a new middle school, and you're getting consolidated operations, more robust programming at the 3 remaining schools. All the benefits that accrue from that configuration, and you're saving the same amount of money. And if you were to close Dorset, you can see that the savings go up slightly. And this cost modeling was what we did originally. And what will happen is once Kyle finishes the plans and everybody reviews those, and there's general agreement that these plans are meet the needs, we will get a professional cost estimate. We'll put those costs back into the cost model and recompute these numbers. And in the past, we've done this for another district. At least in this other district, the numbers came back pretty similar. Same basic in the ballpark. So we're not expecting big surprises, but that summarizes where we are with these 3 options. Obviously, if you close Dorset and Floodbrook, there's even more savings, because those are Like compared to B, which closes Dorset, if you went to one of the H options, there would probably be more savings because you wouldn't have to take care of Floodbrook as an asset. So what we've done to date is what we do is what we call space programming, or space needs programming, is that we put together a spreadsheet that talks about here's the space that each building has existing in the case of the existing buildings, and here's the space that they need to move forward in this new configuration option. And what we've done is we've added a little bit of growth we've accounted for non-residents, we've accounted for a little bit of growth because we think once these schools are renovated and fixed up, especially the middle school, that it'll attract students. And we've computed what size those buildings need to be relative to what they are, and this sheet kind of summarizes that. So Dorset, in option A, which keeps Dorset open, it's really like a stage that is, being proposed. So it's very, not a huge difference. Same thing with Floodbrook. It's slightly bigger, and because if you'll recall, now all the 6th, 7th, and 8th students are now down at the regional middle school. So what that allows us to do at Floodbrook is we don't need all of the outbuildings that they have, all the portable buildings and wood buildings that are behind, which is good because that means you can integrate all those students back into the main building. And according to the calculations, there's still a little bit of square foot. So the way to read this is that if you see a positive number, that means there's an addition needed. If you see a negative number, it means there's a little extra space. Now what's interesting is when you get to MEMS in option A, because Dorset is still open, there's 23,000 square feet in excess, roughly 20,000 square feet that we don't need for the elementary school. However, and this is a design question, and Kyle will talk about this, is that we could use that 23,000 square feet for some of the middle school if there's an addition put there. And the question though is like, what goes in there? Because you want, when you design a building and a middle school, you want it to, you want it to be holistic and complete and integrated, and you don't want to put people in a remote location relative to the middle school. So that's a design question, but I just wanted everybody to know that that's what's happening in option A. Now in option B, interestingly enough, if Dorset is closed, you can see in the option B column that MEMS is just the right size for all of the pre-K through 5 students, less the kids at Floodbrook. And you can see the size of the regional middle school at 88,000 square feet. So relative to existing square footage right now is 189,000 for Dorset, Floodbrook, MEMS. In option A, you would be taking care of 253,000 square feet more or less, and in option B, 234,000, so a bit less, and that's part of what shows up in that cost modeling. And the tables below are just for your convenience in terms of a summary. So that's a lot of words, a lot of thoughts, and so I'm going to pause. This is sort of the end of the formal presentation. I'd be happy to take any questions people have.
Can we ask questions now or later?
Yeah.
Okay, we'll take some questions from the board. John, we need the microphone.
Okay. David, you said that there was a decision made to drop A1 because it was unfavorable. Who made that decision, and can you expand more on why it was deemed to be unfavorable? Well, you said H1 and A1. A1 was.
Randy, do you
the board,
want to address that, or would you like me
The
to?
board last meeting in March, the board voted to move ahead A1 along with two other options. And now I'm hearing that A1 was dropped, and you said that that decision was made. I was wondering who made that decision.
Well, I don't think A1, hold on.
A1, yes, A1 was dropped.
Is A1 the same as A, but with a
Yeah,
middle
it's-
school off campus?
Now, A1 is with 7, 8 on this site, with K through 6 at Floodbrook and K through 6 at Dorset.
Right.
So, just wondering, this comes as a little bit of a surprise to me, given that the board voted to push that forward.
Yeah, so I don't think we've cost modeled 7, 8. There was, because the middle school committee talked about 6, 7, 8, the cost modeling here wasn't done with, okay. We can still cost model only having a middle school for 7, 8. For the purpose of today, I said let's pause because the middle school committee, both committees had said we wanted 6, 7, 8 as a middle school. So that was why I said for tonight, let's not do that. If ultimately the board wants to move forward with only modeling 7, 8, despite the fact that folks have said that, that's fine, as well as whether you want to cost model H1. So if you want that additional information, I think that's totally fine. But given the information that had happened before, I said, let's just move forward with this. So it was my feedback to them to say, let's hold off from that for right now.
Thank you. Jeff?
Thanks, Mel. How's it work?
Gray button down here.
Oh, down there. It's too new for me. Thank you, Mel. On page 13, I think it would be helpful if we had a little more detail, not a lot of detail, but a little more explanation, clarification associated with the 30-year savings. What has gone into those numbers? I think that's extraordinarily important for people when they're going to be looking at this issue. And we want to certainly, if these numbers are good, you know, and they have to be credible, we want to use them in the explanation when we move forward with this proposal.
Sure. So there are 4 factors that are included in the cost model. One is operations and maintenance. The other is capital renewal. And the third is new construction. That would be either a new building or an addition. And then the 4th category is salary, benefits, and fuels. So operations and maintenance was calculated at 2% of net replacement value, and that's recommended by the APPA, the Association of Physical Plant Administrators. That's just an industry standard. Capital renewal was from the facility evaluations that we did last year, I think. We did thorough investigations of all the buildings. We identified all of their infrastructure needs, and so that was what capital renewal was. New construction was based on square footage developed in this programming exercise that I described, and that was we used a unit cost. So we have professional cost estimator on our team. We got unit costs for what like a middle school would cost per square foot, and so that's how we derived that. And then salaries, benefits, and fuels were provided by Taconic and Green. Each one of these was escalated at 4%, which was for the construction. That is the Department Department of Education is currently using, I think, 4.1% in their calculations for yearly construction cost escalation, and the 4% for salaries, benefits, and fuels provided by Taconic and Green. So that that is in the February 27th. There's a slide that describes all of this, which that presentation, and it might even be in the March presentation. I'm happy to share it again if people would like that.
I got a follow-up. Okay.
Go ahead, Jeff.
And this is for probably Randy, but on the issue of salaries and benefits, and was it less than fuels? Is that what it is? F-U-E-L-S? Sort of a funny thing to put in there, but I understand the fuel part, I think. But salary and benefits, we talking about maintenance staff essentially?
We're talking about, oh, sorry. You're asking which figures went into what they are proposing?
Well,
That salary and benefits that are included in these projections?
The fourth category had to do with salary and benefits and,
Yes.
and fuels.
So,
I'm wondering if the salary and benefits were only associated with maintenance staff, i.e., janitorial, et cetera.
No, it was all staff for the whole district.
So it includes
Oh.
teachers as well as support staff?
Yes. Yep.
That's interesting.
I thought you meant maintenance, like maintaining the same number of people. So that's part of my confusion. But
No, I'd like to see that at some point. I don't know if the board has the board seen that as far as, anyway, we can get to that at some point.
seeing what, the staffing configurations?
Yeah.
Or the cost associated with that? We have the docs that we've been working in. We can definitely share that with you. David, the stuff that when we were cost modeling based on, we've got all of that that we can share with the board, right?
We haven't seen it, have we?
Yeah,
We-
because it's what went into everything when we've been working
Yeah,
for the last couple months.
We've seen it? No.
No,
Okay. We would like to.
yeah.
Questions from the board?
I'll ask another
Oh,
follow-up
but
on this.
this,
Sure. Go ahead, John.
Can I use the mic?
here.
I'm sorry if I missed this in your explanation of the option summary with the 30 cost modeling, David, but is the new construction cost of the new building or addition that is included in the 30-year savings projection? And I assume that's kind of a proxy for the size of the bond. That was included, correct?
Yes, all of the construction required to achieve options, A, B, whatever option are included in the cost model.
Okay, just wanted to make sure I heard that correctly. Thank you.
Yep.
Anything else from the board?
Can I just clarify, and Jeff, if you look at packet page 15, you can see sort of the summary of the work that I think that you're referencing, that I've been doing with the architects over the last few months around numbers within a building and staffing configurations. This is just a summary, but is that what you're asking for?
Oh,
No, okay. Well, you can let me know what you're looking for, and then I can
Right.
tell you if we've got it.
well, we can talk about it a little bit as we go through this.
Are you asking her to go through the page 15? That would be helpful for clarification.
I was going to, I don't mean to belabor things here, but I think that the issue of cost is obviously extraordinarily important. Reasonable cost is a standard in our policy statement. It's one of the, up front as far as many of the things that we look at. It's only one of many, but it's an important factor. And I just think we need to get a good handle on the cost issues, not just the capital cost, but also the operational cost issues, and a comparison between the status quo and what is going to be proposed. I think the board needs to understand that fully, and I think the public needs to understand that fully. So that's just one thing I'd like to stress, and maybe when we go through the FAQs, we can discuss it in a little greater detail.
I'm not seeing any more hands up, and I just want to remind us that this is our opportunity to ask questions from the architects before we go into making motions. So if there's anything else, I know that they have limited time. I don't know that we're running into that right now. But if there's anything else for them before we have that discussion. Okay, Ben.
So I guess that my question is because we're going to be moving into a motion eventually on school reconfiguration based on this information, some of the big pieces that we don't have is what are the cost implications relative to what we're seeing here of purchasing new land and building on a new site. And I know that there's a lot of unknown to that, but I think just if there's any way for us to sort of have that in our head, it doesn't necessarily, based on what I've seen for the motion, it's an either or depending on what we find. We can move forward, but I do think that's a key piece of information for us as we look at when we look at the schematics that Kyle's going to put up about what it means to look on site and what it might mean off site and what the cost implications of that are. So maybe that will get touched on a little bit more when we start looking at that modeling. And maybe it's just something that we as a board have to keep in mind. So it's not so much a question, it's just I want to make sure that that's front and center for us.
Thank you, Ben. David.
I hesitate to belabor the point also, but if it's possible to put it in layman's terms, I am confused by this model that you show us with all these savings of $400 million and all that. We're spending a lot of money, so I don't understand how the model works, and maybe I'm just oversimplistic, but if you could give us a general overview of how that $400 million is the money that we wouldn't have spent if we just kept things the way they are? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, so what happens is, maybe I can share a graph that would, let me share my screen again. Maybe this will be helpful, I don't know. Share window, share screen. Can you see the, graph?
Yes.
And I'll explain. Yeah, is that a yes? Can everybody see that?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, great. So on the top, you have, each line, vertical line represents a year. And the dark blue are salaries and benefits. So the lion's share of your costs are salaries and benefits. And that's true with almost every organization. You know, facilities, despite their controversial nature, are a small portion of your total operating budget. If you were to add up all these columns, you know, Taconic Green is going to spend something like $3 or $4 billion in the next 30 years on operating their district as it currently exists. So what you can see on the bottom is the orange, the operations and maintenance, keeps growing and growing and growing, and as does the capital renewal. And you can see, you know, in the overall cost, it's just higher. So, you know, if you select one of these options, it doesn't mean that you're going to not spend money and pocket $400 million. It's bending the curve. You know, you're still investing in the district, and you can see what happens on the second where it says status quo with bond, you can see the orange, which is your facilities costs, to stay smaller. And so your facilities costs, when you bond, become more fixed, less variable. They don't grow over time because you're paying in today's dollars and you're not subject to inflation every year. Also, when you when you go from status quo bond, no bond to with bond, the blue lines, the big blue lines that are on top, the dark blue lines are the same. You can see on the bottom, we modeled H1 because that was the most dramatic savings. And you can see that the blue lines are much shorter. And you can also see that there's, once again, you have cost containment in the facilities zone on the bottom. And so if you were to add up all of these columns versus the very top one, the difference would be 300, 400 million, depending on the scheme. So that's the kind of the methodology. That's kind of the reason why you save. So what happens is, you have, as we mentioned, you have operations and maintenance, and you have capital renewal. And you have new construction. If you have less buildings and less square footage to take care of, the operations and maintenance and the capital renewal costs go down. And what's ironic is even though you're spending money to build a new middle school, you still save money over the current status quo because you're getting the savings from three things. One is you have less buildings to take care of, so your operations and maintenance and capital renewal costs go down. And your salaries and benefits go down because it's more efficient staffing. That's the district has done a really good job of right-sizing the staffing, but there's more savings that can be had in these reconfiguration models. And another factor, and I don't know how the state policies are going to affect this, but your class size guidelines are on the low side in terms of size of classrooms, number of students per classroom. If that was to be tweaked upwards, there could be even more savings from the salaries and benefits side. So I don't know if that helps seeing these graphs, but this is the methodology as to how we approached this. But the true costs will be once when Kyle and his team come up with the final designs and they get they're approved by the district, and then we get those costs estimated. Then we can put all of that back into the model, and then you'll have both an idea of what your current costs would be to do all the work, what the size of a bond would be, but also what the potential savings would be over time.
Further questions from the board?
Just have one quick one.
Sure.
This doesn't include interest payments on the bond then, correct? The estimates?
This does, yes.
Okay.
Yeah,
so you have the size of the bond projected then. What is the size of the bond that you have in here?
Oh, what would be the size of the bond for one of these options?
Yeah, I'm sure
Yeah.
you had to have that to model the model.
Yeah, I can't answer that right now off the top of my head, but I could get that information to you.
Okay.
You mentioned wetlands, and I was curious if there's a problem at the men's site with wetlands as far as building here.
Not that we know of. We're just trying to, before, it's typically something we always do on a site. There are, when you look at the state wetlands mapping, there are some wetlands where you have the district owns 17 acres, and some of it goes into a wetland area. And what we want to do is get a clear demarcation of where that boundary ends and where the buffer for it ends, because you can't really, you can't build in the buffer if it's a class 2 wetland. So it's just part of the due diligence, but we're not overly concerned right now, but we'll see. The wetland biologist is going to be going out soon to do that work, and so we'll have that information in the near future.
Yeah, they're coming out next week.
If we are done with questions for David, why don't we move on to Kyle Murphy from Cato to present on his work.
Hey everyone. I guess I'll do a similar AV check. Can everyone hear me in the room and on the call?
Yes.
All right, I'll pull up my screen. So I'm Kyle Murphy with Cato Architects. We're partnered up with David and his firm on this, and excited to be with you all. Just give me one moment. Is this showing up for everyone?
Yes.
So I guess, at a very high level, we thought, given all the great job David and his team have done, looking at these district options, we thought it would be nice to kind of dovetail that with some high level kind of, progress imagery of where we're at on really digging into the MEMS site. And I should say a lot of this is still in progress based on, some of the survey work that David mentioned and the wetlands delineation that's going to happen. But, I guess at a very, very high level, we understand that cost is a big issue now, and we need to be thinking about this project, like really from a first principles standpoint of like, how do we really do something very special for the kids and for the faculty and for the district, but, think about it in a way that's just an incredibly efficient, well thought out project. And I would say that's the case whether it's an addition at MEMS or if we do end up doing something on a new site. So to really make that point concisely, we wanted to just kind of put a side-by-side between what we could call two different models of how we could think about laying out a school. So on the left, I think of the middle school I went to, I lived in Connecticut before I moved up, my family moved up to Vermont. And I remember the middle school that I went to was kind of like this linear model on the left where everything was just very spread out. And, some of that's just a function of when schools expand, sometimes they just add a wing and it ends up happening that way over time. But I remember, like, if you think about, one arrow to the next, I don't know if you see my cursor, but it was, it was a good 10 to 15 minute walk. And, it always made, between classes feel rushed. There was never really this sort of central place for people to gather in the school. Like, it was sort of the sprawl of a school in a sense. And I know that just from a pragmatic standpoint, that can be, tricky for supervision. And there's a number of things that can complicate. So we've really been trying to look at this through what we could call more of like a central model or even like a loop model where we think about, it's really the library, and we could call it like a learning commons that's basically at the heart of the project. And all the circulation kind of radiates out from that. So we end up with you'll see when we get to the site, we end up with just a very compact, efficient building footprint for the size of the building, as opposed to something that's very long and linear, the way many schools are. And I'm sure, everyone's kind of seen projects like what I'm referring to. So just to, touch on the key points, the sort of benefits that would come from that, we're spending a lot less on building hallways, and we end up with a much more efficient building as a result. Because of that, we end up organizing the academic spaces in what we would call teams or pods, and I'll speak to that in more detail, but it's basically, instead of having a hallway with classrooms branching off of it, we have basically a common space with classrooms that open up onto that, and that can be used for many different types of activities or group work. It gives the faculty a lot more, and the students a lot more flexibility in the way that they're approaching the education. It's better for visibility, for supervision. One thing that's really nice, and I'll speak to this with respect to BBA in a second, is the students are basically all passing through the library anytime they're moving from one key space to the next. So it's creating a lot of interaction with the physical book, which we seem to be kind of losing to some degree. And, especially if you think of a school where a library is kind of like off to the side somewhere, you're having a totally different relationship between the literature and the students than if you have something where the students are actually passing through that. And then a really big thing, this is something throughout the visioning process and the community engagement process that we heard a lot, is that if there's a way to design the project in a way that there can be some sort of, it's like the heart of the building, it's not only something that is of a huge benefit to the students during the day, but it's also something that can be flexible for many different types of community events. There's just a lot of adaptability to what that central space can be. So this is kind of a diagrammatic representation of that. Excuse me. So just to touch on an example of how that actually can look in a project at BBA, this is basically what Founders Hall is. So this is what enabled us to get that project to work from a budget standpoint. We basically have, I'm sure many of you have been in the building, but for anyone who hasn't, we have this kind of library and common space that sits at the heart of the project, represented by this red arrow, and then branching off of that, we have the team spaces. So everything in yellow is connected in very, very close proximity to the heart of the project. And as I said, those are spaces that there's really, I know that when people are led through the building on a tour, it's something that's always emphasized is that there's almost no hallway in the project. So that's really what enabled us to get that project to work. And that's also, I should say, what enabled us to make the library space in the center really nice in terms of having, the timber structure and the nice millwork, and make that a space that students want to be in. And I know that, David's firm has also done many school projects where they've implemented this way of thinking and, at many different scales of projects. So if we move to the existing MEMS site, just to orient everybody, this image is turned on its side, so north is actually to the left. But the primary area that we've been studying is more or less represented by this red rectangle. And if we kind of move to an initial layout that we've been thinking, just to highlight a couple things here. So the dashed red line is the property line with the setback that's required by the town. This is something that we're still coordinating with the survey that we've just recently gotten. So everything that we're seeing on this plan right now is still very much in development. As I said, we wanted to share the progress with everyone. Really the pinch point for the wetlands study that David was referring to, a lot of that has to do with the corner of the athletic field here. So right now you see the athletic field is rotated in its existing state kind of along the side of the parking lot here, and then the batting hill is down here. So part of the due diligence that David was referring to is we want to we're really not concerned about wetlands being back in the area that we're showing the project happening, but we just want to make sure that we're really understanding the extent of where that delineation is, because that impacts the way that the athletic field can be either maintained in its current position or rotated somewhat in order to help us fit a building back here. But that also relates to the parking, and as you see in the existing, the parking is further back, and we've been looking at ways of kind of bringing that up a little bit. So really the defining, I should say kind of the genesis of where this layout came from is we have basically a north-south axis and an east-west axis. And what that would do is by placing it where it's shown by these magenta lines, because this is back behind the existing building, we still want to give this some presence on the site where like when you pull up on the site, it doesn't feel like it's something that's just sort of tucked away behind the existing MEMS. But this would enable us to have the main building entrance visible from basically as soon as you turn the corner from Memorial Ave. And then the parking would be very centrally located to both what would become the elementary school and then the new Central Middle School. So just to run down some of the kind of tabulations we have here, what we're showing on this plan is about a 95,000 gross square foot building, and that has come from a pretty extensive programming process that we've been working with David and his team on. And that basically represents, if we were to cohesively do, and sorry, I should actually back up before I say that, right, we're starting with focusing on option B because we thought it would be easier for everyone to look at, if we were to think about doing the totality of this project as new construction, as an addition, it would be easier to understand some of the shifts that would happen in option A, and I'll get to that in just a moment, so hopefully that will be clear for everybody. But in this case, we have, it's approximately a 95,000 square foot addition. We would, the extent of the renovation inside MEMS, we would have to flesh out further. The existing MEMS is about 105,000 square feet, and as David showed in the option B, it fits very well for what those shifts would need to be in terms of moving the K-5 students there and having that really fill out that footprint, and then that would, obviously we would end up with a more centralized middle school in that case. In terms of parking on the site, we calculated approximately 113 spaces. That's something that we would have to spend a little more time verifying, but that's a ballpark of what we see. Some of it's not really well delineated on the site. And in this plan, we would be accommodating about 142 spaces. But that's something that, again, we need to continue to refine based on the wetland study that comes back and based on the survey that we've just received. So I just want to stress for everyone that these are numbers that are in progress at the moment, and these can continue to evolve. So if we kind of overlay that central model, or that loop model as I was referring to it, this is basically how that would look, and that's the reason that I was emphasizing the difference between the two at the beginning, because basically what we would have is like a big learning commons, we could call that the library as well, that would be at the heart of the building, and that would be represented by this red loop that's very close to the main entrance. And then radiating out from that would be all of the key spaces. You would have the academic teams, you would have, the administration spaces, really everything would be a very close distance to that. And, I would just reiterate some of the benefits of ease of supervision. Travel distances are less because it's, quicker to get from that central space to anywhere. Kids are passing through that library space if they need to get from the eating area to their academic space, and that will allow them to interact with the books. I know, that whenever I've talked with the librarians at BBA, they mentioned how just the rate of students checking out physical books has improved significantly from the previous library that was on campus. So anyway, we want to emphasize that we're really thinking about how do we kind of do this in the most compact, efficient way that also ties into the existing MEMS project on the site. So that would be represented by this heavy orange line. So the main entrance of the building would still have close proximity to it's the east entrance, but again, it's on the top of the page because of the orientation of this plan, and that would tie in nicely to the existing, basically circulation within MEMS. So I'm happy to come back on any of these, but we wanted to start with option B because this shows if we were to take the entire building program as we've come up with, and we thought about that as a kind of a holistic new construction middle school experience. So if we shift now to option A, David had noted the 20 to 25,000 square foot basically space that would be left within MEMS that could be utilized. So this, I should say, this is very diagrammatic, where we're not necessarily suggesting that these are the exact spaces that would shift into the existing MEMS footprint. In this case, we're showing like some of the admin spaces and some of the other support spaces. I think it's really a question of like what space inside MEMS is deemed to be most appropriate for some of that infill to happen, and what part of the middle school program makes the most sense to actually occupy that space. But one thing, again, and of course we have to be unbiased as architects. We're just looking at the different options on this. But one thing we would just point out is that when we do think about what some of that infill is, the downside of that is that can start to kind of dilute the point of doing a new middle school altogether, because if it's this question of like, well, what spaces are we kind of doing the shell game with MEMS, like what spaces are we putting inside MEMS, some of that could come at the expense of having that be, very unified with a lot of the other middle school spaces that are going into that new construction. So hopefully that makes sense. Again, I would just emphasize that this is very diagrammatic at this point. We're just showing this for visual purposes, and that this does not necessarily represent what spaces inside MEMS and what spaces from the middle school would actually shift into that. So that's basically where we're at, and our next steps are we need to continue to refine these options based on obviously feedback we get tonight, the survey, the wetlands delineation, and then the next step would be to refine it into a point that we could actually get a reasonably accurate cost estimate for one or more options, and then we could plug that back into the cost modeling that David had shown. So that's where we're at, and happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Kyle. Questions, comments, feedback from the board? This is a great opportunity. I think you guys all understand that things happen behind the scenes, and now is a great time to give feedback to Kyle and or David to gain more clarity around what we're looking for. David?
Kyle, thank you for your presentation. One of the concerns that has been raised about working in the MEMS area is that traffic is already a bear. And I was wondering how the configuration you have there works with the increased load that would be experiencing when you're servicing both programs and have kids running around at the beginning and at the end of the day.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I think I caught most of that. I just want to make sure I'm understanding. Are you talking about traffic concerns for like residential neighbors, or are you talking about just sort of overall congestion on the site?
I would think more drop-off, pickup,
Yeah.
family considerations for kids.
Yeah, it's a great point. I think I should say part of one of the other next steps I should have mentioned is that we, David's team and us together, we have a really great team of consultants that we put together in terms of a civil engineer, landscape architect, and we need to really flush out these ideas with them and understand, what are some of the traffic implications going to be for this. I mean, I guess just to point out some of the, hopefully I can zoom in here just to highlight some of this. We've tried to touch on some of the big things in terms of like having a main drop off here next to the existing kind of north side of the MEMS building. There would be a circle that would have a turnaround area right around where the main entrance is. And then we've thought about this in a way where there's a fire lane that wraps all the way back, and we're really consolidating a lot of the, I would say, more service-oriented traffic in terms of like, food drop-off, trash pickup, any utility access to like mechanical spaces. We've really tried to get a lot of that back behind here so that, because think of the layers of traffic that happen throughout the day. You have drop-off, but you also have, at times, you have trucks that need to come in when they're dropping off food. There's, trash pickup. There's all kinds of things that are happening at different times of the day. So at a high level, we've tried to address what some of those things would, where some of those things would happen on the site. But that would be another one of our next steps, is that we really need to engage that full team of engineers and consultants that we're working with who will help us really dig into that in more detail.
John?
Kyle, who owns the the land, the path connecting the rec to MEMS. And I'm asking that question is because, creative plan here, but essentially we have more kids on our site and less, less space for outdoor play. How can we use the rec, which is, the best rec center for my money in the state of Vermont, that nearby space as an asset? How can we, short of having a trolley or moving walkway between here and there, how can we bridge that gap? That that's a great space, especially for middle schoolers to have that space, and it requires us, I imagine, to partner with the town of Manchester. But a few things there. Just have you thought about that? We know who owns that land. How do we get closer? How do we make that asset of the rec more accessible?
I'd have to look at the, if I'm understanding right, I'd have to look at the tax parcel map to know if I'm, thinking of the same kind of area of land that you're referring to. I mean, I know, so there's the path that goes kind of from the back corner of the field over to the rec. Is that the general area you're referring to, John?
Yeah, that goes over the back and kill.
He's saying yes, it goes over the back hill.
Yeah. Yeah, honestly, that's something we'd have to look at. I know that, I went to MEMS 20 years ago now, and I remember we had pretty good connectivity through that path getting over to the rec, and that was usually, not so much during the school day per se, but at least for, athletic teams and just general social things, we were pretty easy back and forth. So, I guess, are you thinking if we needed to shift some of, like the recreational programming over there? Is that kind of what you're getting at? Like,
yeah, like how could we do that? Because there's, I don't know, if the town would, yes, how could we do that? If the town would allow us to use that during the day, I know my kid's gonna be gone by the time, if this is built for MEMS, but I'd want my kid walking over there every day, being outside and, having that space to roam. So how can we use that asset? Because we have shrinking green space here.
Gotcha.
We would have shrinking green space at the MEM site, and that's a really quick walk to the rec.
Yeah, we could definitely explore it more. I think as I said, I'd have to, before I speak too much on it, I'd have to kind of look at the tax parcel map to understand, the exact sort of delineation and how all that ownership is working.
Thank you. Anyone else on the board? Chelsea?
Oh, yeah, sure.
Yeah. Where's the button?
Yeah, no, it's not too easy.
Where is it?
Not for me.
Oh, right here. Help. Is this wrong? Okay.
Thank you again. I want to piggyback off of both of David and John's comments. So currently there's 113 parking spaces for MEMS, that's correct?
Yeah, that's more or less what we've roughly counted just from Google Maps. So we need, as I said, we'll have to confirm that.
I'm just very concerned that you're only adding 29, 30 spaces for a middle school, since the parking situation currently and the traffic situation currently is rough, to say the least. And then also just, again, what John was saying is that you have one playground, one athletic field, and the green space. Would the students be sharing amongst the two schools?
Yeah, so we'd still keep the other athletic field that's across from Memorial Lab, so it'd be we'd maintain the two fields, and I know sometimes I haven't been back here in the past few months, but I know sometimes the space here is used as kind of a third space, but we'd have to be the two athletic fields and then the two other green spaces that we're showing here that both schools would use.
Okay, thank you.
But yeah, I should say, I mean, the parking, you're absolutely right that, the parking is definitely a big question, and part of what we would be doing with the consultant team that I was mentioning is exploring, how, like, especially based on the survey and the wetlands delineation, is there a way we can increase that parking count? This is just kind of an initial pass we've taken from the design standpoint to get, to think about how to get as much parking on the site, but still be cognizant of some of the things I was mentioning in terms of, like, trash pickup and everything. But we would want to keep digging into this and think about, is there a way to get another 10 or 20 spaces somehow on the site through just shifting things around in other ways. But we definitely understand that the parking is a huge, it's always, with most projects, it's usually a huge question and a huge issue especially when you're talking about adding anything on.
Thank you. Ben?
Thank you, Kyle. So I'm looking at this project, looking at the design here and consciously thinking, and there's an option, there may be an option to find another piece of land. But if that's not the case, and this is our option, is to build on this site, it may be worth, think a little bit like a city, when I've worked in schools in the city before in New York, and your playground is on the roof, and your playing fields are, you got to get to them. They're not right there. And parking is an entirely different issue. So there are, I do think that for our situation, definitely it's on the boards and Randy and the staff's task list to really reach out to the town and talk about what a partnership might look like at the rec. What are the options that are there, both for playing fields and potentially for parking, because there is some parking down towards the MEM side of things, and perhaps we can get creative with that. So anyway, I don't want us to get totally locked in by saying that it won't fit, when maybe there's other ways for us to think about how we interact with the town and with the community space.
Thank you.
Yeah, I like it. I like how you think. We love doing creative things with roofs. That could be very cool. I guess we didn't want to we didn't want to scare anyone too much by suggesting I guess too crazy of design things this soon. But I think when it comes to saving space on sites, the point is well taken. That there's lots of very creative projects, both in urban environments and more rural environments around the world, that have found a way to provide everything but still save a lot of space. So I think I love what you're saying.
Thank you. Lyndon?
I just have a quick question. It says going with the central model, there's less cost spent on building hallways. So is it the central model is actually less expensive than building a linear model, or is it just less cost spent on building hallways, but more cost on other things?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely, I would not say across the board it's meant to suggest that it's fundamentally a cheaper way to build. I think what we're saying is, because we're creating, I mean, sometimes it may be because you're saving, space on corridors, so it really depends on the way that the building is taking shape on the site and what are some of the other implications on the site. Really what we're saying is it allows us to put the money to better use. So that's part of why I showed BBA, because even though, BBA is the Founders Hall is a pretty, it's kind of an unusual shape as school projects go. I'll admit as a designer that that's the case. But what enabled us to get that project to work financially and to do, the nice stuff inside the library was the fact that it's just a very efficient building from the standpoint of how much was devoted to the actual construction of corridors and everything. So I would say, I totally get your point. I mean, I would say in some cases, yes, it can be a cost saving, just a straight, off the top cost saving thing. But in other cases, what we just want to emphasize is that it would allow us, I'm thinking of some of the visioning sessions that have happened over the past year where, community members have talked about, walking into this really beautiful heart of the building where you have lots of natural materials and, connection to nature, plants, biophilia. Like it's just a really beautiful place for the kids to be in. So, you know, maybe that affords us to maybe use some nicer materials or have, you know, it's a double height space with a really beautiful skylight that's over it. So like those are the types of things that can, there could be some budget for to do that by just really thinking about the project in a very, very efficient layout by having less hallways.
Thank you. I think, Gail, you have a question?
I do, but I can't. Don't have. Okay. I'm assuming, because this model that you've presented was presented to the middle school committee before it disbanded, that it encompasses both academic specialization, it encompasses common big spaces, common little spaces, and that the basic central design could be off-site, minimizing some of the parking issues and also the issues of developing a system that doesn't clog the traffic in any way. So we could, if land were available, take this basic design, although you might have to add another gym, because under the combination you said back in May that you get to use 2 gyms. And it really helps the whole food delivery system for the combined 2 sites. So I'm assuming that this plan has both academic, social, space, and places where middle school kids can congregate, basically unsupervised, but if too much noise or bad stuff is occurring, it becomes readily apparent. Is it true that it works off-site? Is it true that the design works for 7th and 8th grade, if that's the short-term or even long-term solution? Does it work for specifically 6th, 7th, and 8th grade? And will it work regardless of what the general final decision with respect to elementary schools are configured as an end result of product?
Yeah, it's a great point. I would say 100%. This really what we're showing is an organizational approach more so than a specific kind of cook design. So this way of approaching design is adaptable to. I mean, you could build a school that's 10 times the size of what we're showing here with this kind of approach. It's really just a question of what's the final list and sizes of spaces that are going into the project, and is it on this site or is it on a different site? So I would say to all the things that you mentioned, whether it's here or on another site, regardless of the grade, inclusion of which grades, the concepts that we're showing here can adapt to really whatever the board and the community decide is the best path forward.
Thank you. Kyle, I don't think we have any more questions from the board, and I know
There's a couple.
I'll give you one more. Do we have any online, just to check?
Jim?
I think Jim's the only one. And David, I'm trying to be cautious of your time. I think, did you have to leave soon? Or? I'm going to assume you're okay for the moment. You'll let us know if you have to go.
Yeah, I'm good. It's okay. If there are more questions, I'm happy to spend the time to answer them.
Okay.
Thank you. Real quick, when choosing between the linear and the central model and just overall design, I'm assuming and just wondering about the student safety, if that goes into the planning, and how so.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I just want to make sure I understand. You're asking about something with respect to student safety, or just about how that kind of works in general?
The linear model versus I guess I'll call it the round model, the centralized model, and how student safety is considered between those 2 models. Is that right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, again, there's it's not to say that, doing a linear model school is a bad thing. That, there's plenty of really beautiful projects that have been laid out in that way where you have, many different entry points. And as I said, a lot of times it's not a function of one design happening at once, because you've had many phases added over time where it's like, here's a wing and then here's another wing. But I would say, just sort of from a first principles standpoint on doing a more kind of compact, like what we're showing here, it would seem to, because you really have one main entrance and you have one point of controlling people that are coming in and out. I mean, there'd be other means of egress, obviously, from the project just for safety standpoint, but you're really controlling all in and out traffic throughout the day through, in this case, one main point, and that's much easier to have supervision over and have security for the building and for the students, as opposed to something that's more of kind of sprawling on the site, which, especially for the MEM site, that would be harder to do just given the space constraints we have. But, that would tend to lend itself more to, you have more kind of access points around the building that may be harder to keep supervision and security over.
Thank you.
I have just a follow-up on that.
Sure.
Oh, yeah, right over here, sorry. I'm sorry for reaching.
Sorry.
We mentioned that we might be able to use the school as a community resource as well. So if you only have one entrance, could you elaborate on how it would be possible to be able to use like the auditorium or the gym as a community gathering spot if there's one entrance for safety purposes?
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, I think what I should say, that's part of what we would want to continue to flesh out about the design here. The way that we kind of envision this central space is that, it's during the day, like you can have more kind of social library related activities, but then, if you have a performance that's happening in the evening, either that space can convert into something that could be used for that, or in this case we do have a performance space that's separate from that. Or in the case of the second gymnasium, if you have people that are kind of passing through. So I guess some of it would probably just be more related to timing than anything. That it's not to say you wouldn't have any overlap, but you would tend to have more of those community type events happening in, outside of school hours when kids would be using that central space more heavily. And then in the evenings and kind of off hours, I would say that becomes more of a circulation space that connects into some of the other key components that could be used by the community in addition to the school.
So I guess my question is I'm gonna give Dorset as the example. You can use the gym at Dorset and not be able to get into the rest of the building because it's locked. So at night, it can be open and the community can come and go, but they don't have access to the rest of the school. And so I guess my concern is
Yeah, I understand you better now. So
sorry.
when I say one main entrance, that I should have clarified, that's not to say that there wouldn't be other entry points around the building. Like the gym would definitely have its own entry point, and in this case, it's it could be definitely closed off from the rest of the building in a way where people aren't funneling into spaces they shouldn't be. So it's really just during the day when students are coming in and out of the building from just a security and a safety standpoint, and I'll admit I'm not, that's definitely not my area of expertise in terms of what doors are kept locked versus unlocked, but I just, I remember from having been in school, there were certain entrances that you couldn't open throughout the day, and you had to go in through certain ways where there was supervision, and faculty knew where the students were. So having one main entrance to be able to kind of control that would definitely not preclude there being other entrances around the building. It's really just we're just saying that from kind of a general traffic standpoint, that would be the way that most people would be coming in and out of the building during the day.
Thank you. John Wilson, anyone after John? A moment, just so I'm looking around the room, paying attention. Okay, John?
I'm gonna be a pain in the butt and bring back up that A1 option, the 7-8 junior high model. How hard is it to design a building, a facility? Let's say this is just for 7-8, this new building, new addition, or building, I should say. And how hard is it to design it, thinking, all right, this is gonna be for 7-8, it's gonna be a smaller footprint, maybe, it's gonna be less square feet, but we're gonna design it with the real possibility we might add 6th grade later. So, it's a little bit more of a piecemeal approach, but these are flexible spaces we're building. How hard is it to do that? To take that approach, a phased approach, that we're gonna build, 2/3 of the square footage first, with the potential of adding, but this is what we could add on if the community wanted it down the road. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Well, so I think, from a design standpoint, we've looked at many different approaches and, happy to come up with more options that would address just the 7-8 component. I think with respect to, I guess any time we're thinking of this as more of a piecemeal or like a phased approach, I mean, anything is possible, but I think that, for enough cost, but I think that the challenges there are, number one, just from a layout standpoint, it would almost feel like you're kind of tacking on another arm to the project down the road, and that you would lose the ability to really do this in a very kind of cohesive, holistic way right now. And it would definitely be more expensive to do it that way, because not only would there be cost escalation between now and whenever that would happen, or whenever this bond is passed, and if it's a separate bond to do that. But just the act of building that from a, if you think of, and not to get too nuts and bolts, but the amount of envelope that it takes to build around a building, if you're now adding another addition to that, you have a lot more envelope you're building for the amount of square footage that you're getting, because it's not in the building. So it's definitely more expensive in a number of ways to be doing that. And honestly, I'm just thinking of the community attitude towards that. Is there really going to be much appetite for, there's a big bond that's passed to do 7-8. How soon is anybody going to have an appetite to pass another bond for additional construction? I've talked to people who have done other projects, and they've mentioned when there's been kind of an a la carte approach, or more of a piecemeal approach, that whatever was put off for that later component ends up never happening, because the community's just do we really need it? And they don't, So I don't mean to overstep in terms of speaking to how the bond process would go, but I would just caution from that standpoint that my concern would be, would that ever happen if we're already looking at a sizable bond to do even a 7-8 project?
Thank you.
But I should say, we're happy, if the board wants to see more, approaches of how 7-8 can look, we're happy to put more of that together and present it.
Kyle and David, I just want to say, I think we're all set with questions at the moment, and just say thank you for the presentation. Jim, did you have a question? I thought he was waving us away. Did I misunderstand?
Sorry.
Jim, did you have a question?
No, I'm fine. I have some thoughts, but I don't need to express them right now.
Okay. I guess, and I would just add, I appreciate that this is something to look forward to. These are not set in stone. These are just ideas that you're sharing with us, which is why there's no exact cost modeling, because until we move a little further from this point, we don't really have anything to put a number to. But thank you very much. If there's no further questions on that, let's talk about, we'll go to our next item. We'll talk about the FAQ that Randy put together. You want to speak briefly about that, some of the work that's going on behind the scenes to make sure that our public is as aware of our goals as possible.
Sure. So I wanted to just see whether any board members had any questions about anything that was included in there. This was developed in response to the questions that we've been receiving over the last couple of months, and some of the topics that we've heard from folks in the community and questions that you've had. The meetings that I met with many of you in very small groups in the last few weeks in June, and we had some great discussions about the work to date and some of the remaining questions you had. Those are addressed for the most part. Anything that we already had answers to are addressed here. We also recognize that we want to be continuing to share information with the community. So we have a podcast that was generated using the FAQs, using generative AI to essentially create a podcast that talks about the content here. So for people who may not want to necessarily sit down and read it, you can spend about 20 minutes listening to that. So we will be posting that on our website. And then we started this week creating some brief 1 minute or less videos in which the content here is discussed through really short snippets, and we are working with Bob to get those out over social media. We'll start that next week, 1 to 2 a week, so that we can share that with folks in the community. So we'll continue to make additional videos. Those will also all be posted online. We revamped the website, reorganizing it so that we've filtered through materials that have content that's been shared at meetings, and it's organized by year now. So if you want to go back to the first year of the work, you can click on 22, 23, and people can see presentations to the board, decisions that were made, copies of presentations, and kind of walk through the process. We will continue to build on the work, continue to revise it, to get as much information out to people in the community that is as accessible as possible as we work through this and make progress towards whatever it is ultimately that we are going to present to the voters.
Thank you.
So I just wanted to see, I guess, sort of that was my long-winded intro to the work that we've been doing since the last meeting, and see if anybody had any questions about anything that's in here, any board members.
I'm going to go ahead and let Jim speak since he's online, and I heard a little ding on my computer, and then.
Go ahead, thank you. Interestingly, it fits very well with, simple thing, just wanted to mention that 32 and 39 are duplicates in the FAQ. But, one of my major points that I thought really needed to be addressed a lot more clearly has been addressed really pretty well tonight, but I think, that is understanding the cost savings, which to me, I'm a finance guy, and I can kind of, I can wrap my head around how this makes sense, but I think it's one of the most difficult things for most people to understand. It's the fundamental thing of how, if we build a brand new, big, expensive building, how can that save us money? But I think it's important for us to explain to the community. It's a complicated question, but it's important for us to explain and then acknowledge that none of that's guaranteed savings, but to understand where the what went into those calculations. I thought the FAQs were great. I think they cover a lot of issues. That's the one area where my finance nerd sort of mind thought we were falling short.
Thank you, Jim. Jeff.
It's hard to actually push this little button because it's indented. If you have fingernails, it works. Anyway, in any event, again, my thoughts are similar to Jim's and dovetail exactly upon what he has stated. I thought the FAQs were very well done, thorough, comprehensive, but again, short on detail associated with cost. And we really in a complex, expensive proposal like this that's going to serve the town for decades and decades and decades, I think we have to flesh that cost issue out in a detailed way, but one that is extraordinarily understandable to both the board as well as the public at large. So I think the modeling that has been outlined tonight is good, and I love graphs and I like bullets, but we need a lot more detail. We have to understand it. We have to understand what's behind the bullets, what's behind the graphs, and the public has to have that knowledge as well if we're going to approve a large bond issue that's in the offing. I don't know what it is, but I'm sure it's going to be large. Holding out the prospect of saving millions and millions of dollars by doing this particular project now versus going on as we have been, i.e. the status quo, is an extraordinarily important point, but people have to believe it. At the federal level, over the recent past, we had a lot of estimates of cost savings that didn't quite come true. So we want to make sure that our public isn't skeptical, that we make the case, and we have a bulletproof approach to the issue of fiscal responsibility and the cost equation. So at that point, I think I'm actually going to make a motion on this, if I could. And Dick doesn't want me to because...
I wanted to speak.
Well, you can after my motion.
Okay.
I mean, the motion hopefully is something that everybody will embrace, but maybe not. But I would like to get it out there and actually solidify it if I could, so I'm going to make it. I move that the school administration with consultative assistance issue a detailed report that compares projected costs associated with the board-endorsed reconfiguration / building plan with the current option 0 configuration, which is the status quo. The report shall be issued at least 2 weeks prior to a board vote on any related bond issue. And that's the motion.
Do I have a second?
I would second it.
Okay.
And then comment.
Dale would like to second that. Dick, discussion?
I think it's important for us all to recognize that if the basic designs that we were presented tonight were the last meeting of the middle school committee, which I think now was in January or February, that there are tremendous numbers of decisions that have to be made because of the timeline. And by narrowing down the series of options and by refining, we're going to get more consistent data and more consistent, not guesstimates, but real potential savings, which is why I support it, because when we vote for a bond vote, if the timeline that we've once upon a time been given suggests that that vote for a bond issue really won't occur until an awful lot of communication has taken place, an awful lot of very specific details with respect to all of the issues covered by the FAQs. And I don't see a single problem with the motion because it says before we vote, within at least 2 weeks, make sure that we have our financial house in order. And I don't see anything wrong with that, because if we don't have our house in order, I guarantee you, given the tenor of what's going on in both the state and in the national government with all sorts of schemes, the bond vote won't vote, and we'll lose our opportunity as a Taconic and Green BRSU to make the decision. That is a fundamental piece. It is critical. I agree with you.
Other questions, comments from the board? I had a question, just to clarify, because I don't want to not be able to move forward at all. So when you said before we make a decision on the bond, is your intention or the idea behind the motion that before we approve the final bond number that we would put before voters? And that's what you're talking about. You're not talking about holding us up at any other stage of the process.
That's correct. I'm talking about actually voting to move forward with a bond. Yeah, with a specific number and the language.
A specific bond.
Yeah.
Right. Did you write your motion down?
I did. Who can read it?
I just want to ask you that you.
Yeah.
Yeah, actually, can we pass it on to Dawn to make sure she has it?
Right.
We have now, yeah, awesome, thank you, John.
I can take a picture of it.
Ready?
Good luck reading it.
So I also was going to say that I like that motion because it indicates that we're going to move and make some decisions so we can model things out. You know, as Sue and I talk, everybody, including us, wants the information that's coming, but we don't have anything to model on yet. So yes, the 2-week notice is important. I think that there's even a whole lot more that we can talk about because I've been thinking about with the numbers as well. We just, continue to make some decisions so we can get to that point.
Great. Ben?
I'm in favor of this motion, and I guess it's just in the spirit of discussion, just wondering about, one of the things that feels like it can hold up this process is how long do we wait and continue the process of trying to see if we can find another piece of land? And is there a date that we want to send? Maybe this is another motion, or maybe this is just something that we agree upon as a board, but where's that deadline for how long are we going to keep that process going before we make a decision and say, that's not on the table anymore, now we need the modeling on doing this at the one site?
Ben, can I ask that we kind of hold that question until we start discussing the motion that we're going to make tonight?
Sure.
Dick?
There is a timeline, and the timeline calls for an up or down vote with respect to the bond issue in time to educate the public, and the time frame is at least 2 weeks, but if we're smart, we're going to have our ducks in order long before we put this in the form of a vote. And I believe the timeline says that we really need to develop the cost models and the final projects and the designs sometime in either January or no later than February so that the people can vote, unless we choose, because we're moving faster than we ever have, to put it in the November vote.
Let's go ahead and vote on this motion that's on the table. And I think we should talk about the timeline when we make the motion. I think that's pertinent, relevant towards actually coming up with a reconfiguration plan. Okay. All in favor of, sorry, Dawn, actually, would you read the motion to us?
Sure.
Do you have a mic?
No.
You're right. Okay.
No, she's got it.
Sorry, there's buttons on. I turned it on.
Move that the school administrators consult with consultative assistance issued a detailed report that compares projected costs associated with the board endorsed reconfiguration building plan with the current option configuration. This report shall be issued at least 2 weeks prior to board vote on any related bond issue.
Is that right, Jeff?
Yeah, it's just option 0 is comparing it.
Oh, option 0.
Yeah,
Okay.
option 0 is what they call the current.
Configuration.
Okay.
Yeah, right.
Any questions about the motion? Okay, all in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any nays?
Did you count Jim?
I did count Jim. Well, I'm looking at Jim. So the vote is unanimous and it will pass. Any more questions on the frequently asked questions? If not, I feel like we're ready to move into the public comment section. Okay, just a reminder to the public, again, I know this is not always comfortable for everyone, but it's super important that we're using the microphone. This public comment is intended for the residents of the Taconic and Green Regional School District. This is their opportunity to weigh in since they will be the voters on this for the bond, when we get there, when we get there. We were gonna keep this to a strict 20 minutes. Again, you've heard me say this before, if you have something to repeat that's already been said, it would be helpful so that as many people can speak as possible. You would say, hey, I agree with my neighbor and what they said on this point, rather than reiterate it. And I think that's it. Thank you. Oh, please state your name and town.
Hi, my name is Stefan Flanagan. I live in Londonderry. I just have a clarifying question, either for the architects or the board, especially on this financial question of relating the bond vote to option 0 or 0 with the bond. Don't those options include the maintenance for Courier and Sunderland? And wasn't it already voted on that those 2 schools should close regardless of if there is a regional middle school built or not? So then, if I'm correct in my head math, wouldn't the cost savings be way greater if you don't have to do maintenance on those 2 schools?
David, do you recall, I don't remember.
Is this a Q&A?
I think that's a fair enough clarifying question. Yeah, I mean, we're generally public comment, but it's a pretty quick question. I think doesn't include Sunderland and Courier. David, is that an easy answer, or should we come back?
Yeah, I mean, the current option 0 does include Courier and Sunderland, so it really it's the status quo as the district operated this year. If the new status quo doesn't include those schools, then the total cost savings would be less relative to the new status quo, but it'd also be less. The new status quo would be less than it is currently. So we can do it either way. It's whatever way of framing it makes the most sense. It's fine.
I think that answers the question, though. David. Thank you. And if we want to look at that later, we can request that information. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Sarah Kiefer. I'm a resident of Londonderry. I've been a public school educator for 20 years. I've had 3 kids come through Floodbrook. One is going to be a 7th grader this year. I've coached middle school softball and basketball for a number of years, and I'm a taxpayer in the town of Londonderry. So I'm really looking at this regional middle school projection through a number of different lenses. Listening to the financial projections tonight, one of the things that stood out to me with the projected cost savings was the statement around having more efficient staffing. And while I've been conflicted about what is in the best interest of mountain kids in terms of a regional middle school that's located down in Manchester, Dorset, one of the things I heard say in the last board meeting was that there would be opportunities for enrichment or expanded learning. And to me, I conceptualize that as like maybe more theater programs or more arts, or maybe more hands-on, like industrial arts kind of classes, more expanded like foreign languages, more computer tech classes. But what I'm hearing from the projection is that there will be a reduction in staff. And so my question or my comment, I'm not sure where to go, is what is that really going to look like for the regional middle school in terms of staffing? What positions are going to be cut? Will there be expanded programming, and will there be positions added? And how is that factoring into that projected cost savings?
Thank you. I think we'll try to keep this to comments and write that in there so that we make sure that those questions are certainly answered, especially when we get closer to that bond vote and we have a better sense.
I apologize for asking a question, then so
No,
let me make a comment. I'm 50-50 on whether or not I'll support a bond for a regional middle school, but the biggest pro is that this will be something better and different for our students. And based on the assumptions I'm making from the numbers that were presented tonight, I don't see where the enrichment or expansion is reflected in that.
Thank you. That was a nice reframing of that question into a comment.
Good evening, and thank you for your presentation tonight. Bill Drudzik from Manchester. I'm looking for some clarification on a couple of the statements that I heard tonight. And one was on the square footage of the buildings, current versus proposed in either option. As I heard them, it sounded like there would be quite an increase in the number of in the amount of square footage we would be maintaining, but I'm asking for clarification on that. And then the second question, I guess, is relative to what you have discussed in the motion that you passed, is I think a simple way to probably frame this is what is the step down in operating costs from our current situation to what the operating costs would be under the new situation in each scenario. I mean, and roughly in percentage numbers, do we get a 15% or 20% step down in our operating costs? That would help, I think, everybody understand how we might obtain our savings. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm happy to speak to the square footage if I understood correctly.
Sure.
Yeah, Bill, so the existing MEMS footprint is approximately 105,000 square feet, and we're showing at least the addition in the option B as being about 95,000 square feet. That, there could be some tweaks in that number as we continue to refine the design, but that's more or less just, from the programming process that's told us, what needs to be included and how big the things need to be based on, there's metrics that were used for, how schools are typically sized around the state. So in terms of the actual renovation to MEMS, that, like what David had shown is that at least in that option B, most of really that whole footprint gets filled through K through 5. The amount of actual renovation is to be determined based on, where are we moving walls, where are we changing things, like we want to be reconfiguring, some things just to lend itself to the best K through 5 experience that we can. So if I'm understanding your question right, that's the size of the building, but the actual renovation itself, the size of the renovation is to be determined, and then the addition that we're showing is about 95,000 square feet in option B. In option A, there's that 20 to 25,000 square feet of middle school that gets shifted into the existing MEMS footprint, which would make the addition that much smaller, and there would be that overlap space in the existing MEMS building.
Thank you, Hal. Bill, I think you were probably asking about how many the footprint of all the schools combined.
Yes, correct.
And we don't have those numbers.
Oh, I'm sorry. I may have misunderstood.
That's okay. I would say let's convene afterwards. Do we?
I think our first presenter mentioned that.
Yeah, David's probably got it.
Do we have a quick number? I want to make sure that we're still moving through public comment quickly. Enough that people can comment.
We can add that too to that picture.
Let's add that too, Bill. Maybe we'll touch back when we have a meeting.
Yep.
Yep. And Sarah, also not to cut you off, happy to chat about more opportunities at the end of the meeting as well.
Hello, my name is Carol DuPont. I've been told, Manchester Center, I've been told not to ask questions, to make comments. So I'm hoping when I make the comment, if it's wrong, you'll correct me. That's always fair. As far as I know, Taconic and Green was started in 2017. From what I've heard, it has not saved us any money. All right? That's what I've heard. Now, I want to know, first of all, I don't understand middle schools. I don't understand why there's a big push for middle schools. I can remember one father in Sunderland saying, if my son is here, maybe he can play a sport and get good. If he goes to a middle school where there's a lot more population and competition, he may never be able to play a sport. And I thought, again, I think Sunderland has a very good reputation for turning out very well-rounded students and academically very sound. Everyone's talking about money. The other thing I'd like to know is, Vermont used to be in the top 10 for education. Now Vermont is ranked somewhere, as I hear, either 37 or I've heard 40 in the last week or two. So I want to know why everyone's talking about money. And the other thing is, if you know Manchester at all, I don't know how many more buses this would bring to Manchester. I don't know. What, 7 more buses a day? That's going to destroy Manchester. So you better think about it very carefully. Plus the fact, if I lived in Sunderland and you closed my school, I would move as fast as I could. Because to put a kindergarten, first, second, or third grader, and you can look this up, there are reports on this, on a bus for 45 minutes to an hour a day, they won't learn a thing. I thank you for your time.
Thank you, Carol.
I don't know how I followed that act, but Carol had brought up some great points. I'm Maria Cummins. I am a special needs mother of 2 boys with autism, one at Dorset and one at BBA, and I'm also an advocate in the community. I run a special needs group at the Manchester Library for over 3 years. That I'm very proud of and is growing every day. So obviously the numbers of our special needs kids are growing every day as well. And so I do want to piggyback on John and Kelsey and Rogan, and just I feel like it's important for us to just point out how incredible our board is and our team is in bringing up the really important aspects. John with using more of our land and the rec center, and how our green is really small in comparison to adding another school. And it's not really, in my opinion, high school or middle school conducive. It's an elementary playground, right? So where are our middle schoolers going to get outside time and outside air and experience in this amazing state that we live in? And I wanted to ask, because I'm not an architect, correct? I'm an educator and I'm a special needs mom. So our building, I love the inclusive building, the community building, and I love what you've done at BBA with the Founders Hall. But when it comes to all our children that a lot of them do have special needs and difficulties, are we planning to create more accessibility for our wheelchairs and for our children that have limited ability in their physical sort of capabilities? The gym and the auditorium and the music center is great, and the community option, again, we just need to make sure that we're pointing out that it is going to be wheelchair accessible. And again, I love the plans and they're beautiful, but I can't read them, right? I don't know what X means and if that's an elevator or what it is. I do see a lot of stairs, and so I'm concerned for the families that come to me and asking me, even from out of the state, are connecting with me and saying, what school do I go to and what are our options as a school? I've been very pleased with the schools here. This is why I brought my family back to Vermont and my 2 boys, but also, I need to keep the lines of communication open, and so I really want us to, as Carol so eloquently and kindly and sweetly said, it isn't always about the money that we're saving $400 million, right? For us as parents and educators, we do want an immediate, we do want a sort of like what's going to be more evident. And I love the facts page too, it's covering so much, but I know that's a lot. Sorry, go ahead, throw anything at me. Okay.
Thank you, Rand.
Do they answer or no?
Okay,
I should express it. Okay, great.
No,
Thank
yes.
you.
Right, working,
Well, I just wanna
expressing,
make
and
sure that
taking notes, and
Yeah,
hopefully
and
taking
that
these back with
we're in
us.
agreement with the board, and I appreciate that so much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, nice to see you all. Ashley Bolton, South Londonderry. I want to thank you for holding this July session. I know it's less than ideal, and as someone mentioned earlier, I think the decision is trying to be made more quickly than other things have in the past, which is a flag for concern. There were just a couple of things earlier that I wanted to comment on. First, I second what Sarah said, the staffing efficiency raised a really big red flag for me. Also, understanding the cost, what I believe I understood if it was 4% in total for 30 years or 4% per year. Either way, it seems like it's over 30 years. if I'm reading that correctly. So it's a little under 15% over the course of 30 years, which makes it less than 2% of increased efficiency per year. What is that going to look like in comparison to the bond number, which was not available tonight, and also what that will look like with property taxes? And additionally, sorry, I just lost my train of thought. Property taxes, and then also factoring in the cost of inflation when building actually starts. Cost of materials, cost of contractors, the time it'll take to get somebody to actually put this project through. I don't think those maybe were taken into consideration, but it would be something of concern for comparison when you bring up the bond report. Another concern was safety for centralized area and hallways. What will lockdown and fire drills look like? We're designing a school for middle schoolers based on a high school. High schoolers' brains are obviously developmentally much more advanced, even if it's only by a year. But freshmen are surrounded by older students who have a better understanding, and they are able to make those decisions for themselves. I think we're asking our children to grow up a little bit too quickly in this model. I love the rec. I think it should be used in some way, but how do we address safety concerns if public is allowed to use the rec during school hours, and we're suggesting children to be able to use the rec during public hours? I know at Floodbrook right now, the public is not allowed on the field, on the playground, anywhere near the school while school is in session. So that would be another concern. I also hope before you make this decision that you do discuss a big topic of conversation in the past meetings was us losing middle school students at an increased rate in comparison to other years. I hope you take the time to speak with families who have moved their children to Long Trail or any other school outside of our district and ask them why that happened. I've spoken with many, and I have probably a different understanding, but also recognizing that our public schools do what they're meant to do, which is serve the majority of our children and our communities. Floodbrook does what it should for our communities over the mountain. Mountains does what it does for the children in Manchester, and Dorset does what it does for the kids in Dorset. There are select children that may be gifted or experience other scenarios that push them to those schools, but that's not the majority, and I hope that's also taken into consideration, the reason we've lost middle schoolers and the reason they aren't making the move, because I think you'll hear different stories from other parents. That's it. Thank you.
I think we'll take one more, and it'll be at a 20-minute mark.
Frank Kanak from Mangrove, Vermont, and I have two kiddos at Floodbrook. Can I just ask a quick question that'll help my comments? Are y'all voting tonight on whether, for that interim plan of moving kids to Dorset in that interim period?
No, the only, right, not on a transition plan tonight.
Perfect, okay. So two things. One, looking at the FAQs, which I very much appreciate, and I really appreciate you all moving this public comment to after we had some more context. I think it's really helpful. But in terms of the impact of the education bill that passed this year, one thing I didn't see in here, and so I'm really curious about the analysis and how it impacts, is my understanding is there's the legislation that passed in section 1418. There's provisions that provide additional funds for, quote, small schools and for sparse schools. For small schools, for example, it's 100 people or less. Under that, I think Courier and Sunderland would qualify. Under the sparse schools, I think Courier would potentially qualify. It provides additional revenues to those schools if they qualify. It looks like there's going to be additional rules provided by the state board by December 1. So I'm curious how that, the opportunity to have all this additional revenue potentially coming to those schools impacts your all's analysis and whether it still makes sense to move forward with closing those schools. I think also in terms of the permanent plan, I really appreciated the point made earlier around having a better understanding of what exactly it means. I also heard that we're going to see a reduction in staff. I think one thing that would be particularly helpful, because I really appreciate hearing now that you all have specific numbers that enabled you to come up with a specific amount for the analysis for staffing. Taking that figure that you used for that analysis and doing a side-by-side by school district. So when you're talking about all the additional benefits that are going to be coming if you do this middle school, looking at, for example, Floodbrook. what staffing exists at Floodbrook right now, and putting that side by side with what would exist in this new middle school, so parents and others in the town know exactly what they're getting. So I think side by school, I think would be really, really valuable. And one just additional point, I think it's important, in the FAQs, look at specifically at Floodbrook, because that's just where my experience is. One of the critiques about Floodbrook is there's, quote, limited social relationships that create significant challenges. I'm not sure what that's based on. It looks like there have been some conversations that happened, but as a parent of 2 kids there, both of my kids thrive there. Everyone I know whose kids that go there thrive there. They love the school. The teachers are absolutely amazing. The teachers are really proactive at looking for when there's interventions that need to happen and getting in front of that without parents having to get involved. And so I'm just curious how that claim was made, and I think it'd be really helpful for the school board to do some type of survey of parents, of students writ large, not small groups, but to understand the way that people feel about the schools, the concerns that they may or may not have about the schools, so that we can actually have a fact-based conversation, not just this rhetoric that I keep seeing in this. I appreciate it. Thanks.
Thank you. Do you have a 1 minute or less comment that you'd like to make for us?
I'll do my very best.
Great, thank you.
Heather Stevenson, Londonderry, Vermont. Can you all hear me? I guess my comments.
Heather, can you step up to the mic just a little bit more? I can't hear you, which means they can't hear you on TV.
Yeah, okay, great. I guess quickly, my comments are, I would love to see cost modeling to include transportation more immediately in your data. I feel like it would be a misstep not to include this, so we can get a realistic cost expectation of that. Another general comment is Men's is not an easy site considering traffic, parking, river, there are wetlands, field space, playgrounds, the size of the parcel, because there was a planning effort a few years back that looked into a lot of these things, and I'm really curious about what a new property would cost. A space that would be a good fit or even a projection of that. And then finally, I appreciate the comment about A1. I thought we would be seeing that. I reached out about it earlier today, and I wanted clarification. Are you all planning to vote without A1?
I guess the only thing that I can say to that is that we are anticipating potentially voting, and the voting will be based on what we know of what's been given here and what we have seen in the past. So, thank you. Okay, so let's move on to item C, which would be to take action on a final TNG elementary school configuration. Does anybody want to open up with, or David, do you want to open up with a motion to get a discussion on the table?
I would love to make a motion. The motion is contingent upon a past bond vote. We move to reconfigure Taconic and Green schools with the purpose of providing our students with the most educational opportunities in a way that best serves our TNG students long into the future. To achieve this, we plan to build and open a 6 through 8 regional middle school, either on the current Manchester property or on a new property in Manchester to be determined at a later time, and operate 2 pre-K through 5 elementary schools. Elementary schools will be housed in the current Manchester Elementary Middle School building and in the current Floodbrook School building. That's the proposal. Oh, sorry, that's the motion.
Would anybody like to second that motion?
I'll second.
Jeff. So that is David, I made the motion, and Jeff is seconding. Okay, open up the floor for discussion.
Is there any way to separate it into 2 motions? We can keep it as one. The build and open as one and operate as a second.
We've already approved the first part. We've already approved the regional middle school.
So then why are we putting it back in motion?
For clarity.
Because it's a total package. Right?
Yeah, and decided we're building, or we're moving forward with plans for a regional middle school, right? So yeah, the question was if we need to keep the two items in the middle school and the elementary school together, and I think David said for as it stands right now, we're keeping them together as a package, but certainly an amendment could be offered. Yes, Dick.
Based on the discussion tonight by the architects, I think that we have reached a critical point where we truly need to take a look 6 years or 5 years out. And this motion is the final configuration. How we get to that, if this is the final configuration, is a subject probably for August, maybe well into September, in terms of the details that get us from where we are now to where we would be if buildings have been revitalized and built new. So we've reached a critical point. Since last time, we've approved a motion to begin the process of closing 2 schools, Sunderland and Courier. A vote for this motion would suggest that while there may be lots of interim material that surfaces, I know that Brandy has worked on at least 3, if not 4, possible transition plans that the board is going to have to consider. The alternative to this particular proposal, from my perspective, is that if in fact there's logic and rationale and reasons why both Sunderland and Courier have to undergo the process of closing under the provisions of the original agreement, which says 3/4 of the board have to vote in favor of the closure after the board is required to go to both areas of the schools and once again, as unbiased as possible, listen to the rationale and the ideas of the community. Given that, I am strongly in favor of what Jackie Wilson told me as I joined the Taconic and Green, that she'd been advocating a unified middle school for what she called the Valley. And Floodbrook would have to kind of be on its own and be underutilized because of the declining population. Jackie also, as we were on the Northshire Committee, as the assistant superintendent and ultimately before it was all passed, indicated that she felt herself as superintendent with all she knew that establishing a unified middle school would utilize and be beneficial, utilize critical school resources and be the best educational possibilities as well as what that means. Social responsibilities, athletics, you name it. So it's been a long time. It turns out when you read the Manchester Journal, this idea has been kicked around since 2006. If we're going to get to the bond vote and get the architects to do what they have to do, it is my belief that a single valley elementary school dedicated to elementary school education and a mountain school, despite the fact that it will be well under the size dictated by the recent state legislation, which is undergoing, as of August 1st, a whole bunch of plans that all have to be delivered effectively by December 15th. I believe that it is in the interest of the Taconic and Green to adopt the most sound educational system, and I will vote in favor of this motion.
Any further comments or discussion?
Is A1 still alive in this motion? Could be.
I don't think so.
That's not what's here.
Right? I mean, I don't fully understand A1, but
Here,
Randy, do you want to speak to A1 specifically?
I do want to speak to A1, but I also feel like there's more context that's really relevant as you're considering next steps. There is a lot at play. You know that this work has been the focus of our work for the last 3 years, and continuing to think about how do we provide the best education for our kids in the future is what is driving recommendations, decisions, as well as the financial situation we will be finding ourselves in moving forward. We are entering into a very different type of a situation, and it is very important to me to ensure that whatever actions we're taking are future thinking, forward thinking, best for our kids and best financially for our community. So all of that is what is leading to the recommendations that are coming. If we only put 7th and 8th graders together, well, let me jump back. We know that we are switching to a foundation formula way of funding education. That is really significant, because what that means is local voters are no longer voting on our Taconic and Green budget or whatever the new system is going to be. We will get money to educate our kids from the state, and we need to do the best we can with it. Right now, our system is really diffuse. We have resources spread over a lot of schools, and we have declining enrollment, so we have fewer resources. So we are operationally inefficient, and we are seeing the impact of that on opportunities, educational experiences for our kids. So if we as we're making proposals and as the board is needing to make some decisions, if we put 7th and 8th grade together standalone as a school, we have approximately 200 or 220 kids. That is not enough students to substantiate a full caseload of unified arts teachers. If I'm gonna indirectly now answer Sarah's question because I can. When we operate a middle school, we can have an art teacher who is able to offer a wide variety of electives so that our kids can have expanded opportunities to take a pottery class or a drawing class or a painting class. It's one person who can offer a wide array of services that we currently can't provide our kids in a K-8 model. So we are able to take skills, licenses, expertise of people and use them in a very different way. On a team, we're able to offer academically a wider range of courses. All of our kids can access algebra in 8th grade. You know, within that team structure, we can do more with the staff we have because we are operationally more efficient and consolidated at a size that we can maximize what we provide our kids. The model that's being designed, that centralized model for a middle school, has spaces for small group instruction right within a team so that we're able to make sure that kids who need intervention or specialized instruction are able to access it right there with their teammates. So we really think about accessibility, we think about services. So the idea, we will, for sure, do a cost comparison or a staffing comparison of what's going to happen. But some of that is directly related to the proposals that are coming, and some of it is about the writing on the wall, about the funding that is going to be coming our way, and I don't want to gut our programs. I want to be prepared, I want to be ready, so that when we have less money coming into our system, it is not negatively affecting what we're doing for our students. And the whole foundation formula shift is intended to respond to what people are saying is an overspending in education in the state. We are spending too much. We have fewer students. We're spending more money. And so the entire purpose is to spend more money. So we should expect to spend less money, so we should expect less money. So I'm saying all of this because I want to provide a greater context. What is driving the proposals and the thinking and the work that we're doing in my office is what we provide for our kids. And I want to make sure that as we look ahead to the future of Taconic and Green, that we are ensuring that they have everything that we value and want in our community. When there's a new system, when there's a new school district that is in play, this is my personal opinion, do not think that they are going to care as much about our kids as we do. So if we can do the work now and decide as a community what we value, right-size our system, provide the programming and opportunities we want through this transition, I think that's best for our kids. So as you embark on this, I wanted to share that with you. I am, my mind, I feel like if you could look at it, you'd be like, that is a playground I do not want to play in, right? There's a lot going on right now. There's a lot to consider. And so doing better for our kids with what we're going to have ahead of us, I feel is my responsibility. And I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have as a board as you kind of look ahead at the decisions you need to make.
Thank you. Further questions for Randy? Kyle and David are still on the line also, but amongst our board, this is, we're making a big move so that we can move forward and get something out to the voters this year. So, any last minute questions before we vote?
Yeah, I've kind of half-formed thoughts. I still think, concerning A1, I hear your point about the operational efficiencies around unified arts, correct? You can staff a 7-8 unified arts team, correct? Is that?
We will be in a position, as we look ahead, to not be able to overstaff our buildings because we won't have the financial resources to do it. So all of this reconfiguration is around creating stable structures so that we can have full-time employees and maximize opportunities and experiences for our kids. So unified arts is one aspect of it. The other side is, you mentioned 7th and 8th grade as a junior high, which is not at all the direction that our teachers are interested in going. They're really, the input I've heard from quite a few teachers is the idea of really having a strong middle school model based on community, sense of belonging, advisories, all that kind of stuff, and including 6th grade in that is a very, very common and effective model. So
yeah, and I understand. Yeah, okay, that makes sense. And what I'm struggling with this motion, the last bit, the language, essentially that's closing doors too, and just like to be blatantly honest here, the political calculations in my head is it seems like this is a big hill to climb. We've got going Floodbrook K to 5, closing Sunderland, closing Courier, writings of closing Dorset eventually. With that, and I believe that a regional middle school is better for kids. I do, but I'm worried about the political the political calculation I'm seeing is that that is a really, we have to be really clear with the vision about, and I think we're getting better with FAQs and everything, but like, what is this going to be? How great is this going to be? People love their local schools, and if this was just our decision, it'd be different. But there's a political calculation here because the voters have to approve this bond vote. And so I'm worried about the political grind of this, and we have to be really good at refining this vision and selling it. Sorry if that wasn't very articulate.
Thank you. A hand up. Is that Jim?
Yeah.
Would you like to speak?
Yep, and, I just want to, I understand this is difficult, and this has been a long process, and it's hard to get to a point where you're dropping off some of the things that we've considered over time. But I think, from this year, a lot of us spent a lot of time with the legislation at the state level. And I think, Randy did a very nice job of summarizing, key points, which are, honestly, in order to make our system, if we don't remake our system in a way that is going to improve education for our kids and make it more efficient, we're going to be back to the old days of every year figuring out what programs we're going to cut back. And, we all lived through that in our individual boards that we were on in the old days, and it's extremely painful. And I think, the thing I love about this, the approach, which, I've learned a lot over these several last years in looking at this stuff, and have become, a real believer in what we're talking about doing is going to significantly improve the opportunities for our kids. And the shocking thing is, at the same time, it will make us dramatically more efficient. I mean, it's just, to me, if we could have probably continued to struggle along, the way we always have been for some years to come. But the actions at the state level are really going to come home to roost. And I think, I'm just extremely in favor of moving in a direction that is going to, have us determining what is the best thing for our kids before we lose the opportunity to make that decision. And I think absolutely 100% agree that we still have, some homework to do ourselves and a lot of explaining to our communities to do. But I think we have, I think we have a very good story to tell. And so I think it's, it's up to us to, a lot of people in our community have been, questioning this for a long time. But I think we have a very good story to tell. We just have to, we have a lot of work ahead of us to explain exactly why it is a good plan. I just want to say, I am supportive of this, and I think it's really important for the future of our kids and our taxpayers.
Go ahead, Ben.
Thanks, Melanie. And I just, I guess I'll start by saying I'm supportive of the motion, and the reason for me that's standing out that I want to express is just the cost of education and the cost that the community can bear. And we've heard every year when Burton comes and gives its presentation on what they're setting the tuition out, Mr. Tashin makes it very clear how much more a Burton education actually costs. And that is not something that we can do as a public school board. We cannot raise twice the amount of money that we get from taxpayers in order to fund our schools. We don't have that ability to do that. And unless we do a better job at being more efficient, and that is what this proposal is an effective working at efficiency, in order to provide the best possible education, we just can't do it. We can't. School education costs too much. And the way that this legislation that was just passed is moving us, as Randy has just really clearly expressed, we're not going to have the ability as a town to set a higher budget because we want to provide more for our students. We just won't have that option. And so the way I see it, unfortunately, I feel like our hand is really being forced by what we've absorbed as bearing in public education for costs, all the different services we provide, and how we pay for it. And so I just, as much as I am an advocate of small schools, I've taught in small schools, I went to a small school, I think they can do wonderful things for children, but they're really, really expensive. And I just, in this climate, and looking out 20, 30 years, I see this as a way of us being able to have some control and to provide a really high quality education in a more efficient way.
Thank you, Kim. David, did you want to speak?
Yes. A lot of the things I want to say, unfortunately, have already been said, but I pulled it all together into a kind of, holistic statement. So it starts like this. There are points in history when it is time to make a decision. In our case, we have conducted studies, we have analyzed all the issues, but there are still questions and uncertainties. We know that if we jump forward, we are changing things irrevocably from what they were, and some good and valuable things will be lost, no question. Furthermore, the future vision is not guaranteed. It looks good on paper. It is this general concept that is not yet clearly defined because the programs have not yet been established. The staff hasn't been put in place. And of course, the building hasn't been built yet, not to mention that the financial bill hasn't been paid. These unanswered questions are scary, all-consuming. The temptation is to hold on to what we have for as long as you can and let the chips fall as they may. However, we also know that if we do not jump now, we will miss the opportunity to influence the ultimate outcome that we all desire. This decision that we are making tonight is the culmination of 3 years of study, surveys, discussions, forums, and so on. We have hesitated to take action because there are still a lot of unanswered questions. But then in June, the Vermont legislature passed the new bill. This one single event changes our school governance structure, and it gives us a deadline for when the new governance structure is put in place. In big history, this catalyzing event might be called a Pearl Harbor moment because it crystallizes the fact that if we want to take action, we must take it now. The new board that will govern the education of our students in the North Shire will probably be smaller. It will have broader responsibilities, and it will necessarily focus on the larger needs of schools. It will not be able to maintain the focus for which we strive to consider the needs of each individual student. With this deadline, we now have a time frame within which we can try to establish the education system that will best serve our entire community long into the future. And by the entire community, I mean the North Shire and the mountain towns. This means we have a path we must walk if we have any hope of achieving the long-term goals. Otherwise, we will look back at this moment with regret. Oops. Let me make this clear. A no vote is a decision in itself. It says, I don't trust the time we've invested, I don't trust the work we have done, and I don't trust the conclusions we have drawn. I believe in our hearts that we do trust the conclusions we have drawn. We all know that our students will be best served when they have access to all the services they need, when language study or other specialized opportunities can be readily provided, when programs and best practices can be implemented. In short, our kids will be best served when they have what they need, when they need it. If we don't pass this motion, which leads us to where we all know this valley, this community, should be in the next 5 to 10 years, I fear our community will look at us at the end of those 10 years and say, we, this board, lost our heart at the last minute. We did not have the courage to make the decision we needed to make. They will say, we failed our Pearl Harbor moment.
Thank you, David. I feel like the board is ready to vote. Dawn, you have the motion in front of you? Yeah. Would you mind reading that for us, and then I will call for the vote?
Contingent upon a passed bond vote, we move to reconfigure Taconic and Green schools with the purpose of providing our students with the most educational opportunities in a way that best serves our TNG students long into the future. To achieve this, we plan to build and open a 6 through 8 regional middle school, either on the current Manchester property or on a new property in Manchester to be determined at a later time. And operate 2 pre-K to 5 elementary schools. The elementary schools will be housed in the current Manchester Elementary Middle School building and the current Floodbrook School building.
If we're all clear on the motion, all of those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye or raising your hand.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Any abstentions? That passes unanimously. Wow. Thank you, guys. We are moving on to executive limitations. Looking through, sorry, I'm just catching myself here. That was a big move. Dick, would you like to make a motion?
I move to ratify the Taconic and Green staff agreement side letter amendment that we discussed at the last meeting. Approval.
Can I get a second?
Second.
Lindsay. Do you need any discussion or clarification on this by Randy? It's in the packet. I think we've all taken a look.
Yeah, this is the first time you're seeing this for this year. For the upcoming year, we're requesting the ability to continue maintaining the safe driving stipend that we've had for bus drivers as a recruitment and retention factor. It really worked well, and I'm asking, and the association's okay with us continuing it. I just need you to vote for it.
Any further questions or discussions? Anyone on, Jim, did you have a question? Okay. Oh, signing off, sorry. All those in favor of ratifying the TNG staff agreement side letter amendment, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Passed unanimously. We'll move on to approving monitoring of policy 2.2, treatment of staff. Can I get a motion to?
I move to approve the monitoring policy of policy 2.2, treatment of staff.
And can I get a second? Kelsey, a second. Okay. Again, this is in the packet. Randy, did you want to speak, or are there any questions specifically for Randy on this? Seems pretty straightforward. Great. Go ahead and vote. All those in favor of approving the monitoring of policy 2.2, treatment of staff, please signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? Seeing none, that will pass. Action to approve wellness policy report.
I move to approve the wellness policy report, which is required on an annual basis and parallels exactly what we did, only there are no areas of deficiency this year. And they really cover all of the rest of the details going forward through the rest of the summer.
Can I get a second for that? Ben, thank you. Anything else, Dick, you want to add to that? Any further discussion, clarification needed for Randy? Great. Move to a vote. All of those in favor in approving the wellness policy report, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any nays or abstentions? Seeing neither, that will pass.
We've actually discussed this in several different meetings. It has to do with the land that is close to Floodbrook that Stratton had offered to the Taconic and Green under certain circumstances, and we've discussed those circumstances. We're still in negotiation, but it was felt by the executive committee that it was important that we again, as a board, approve moving forward with the negotiations about the Stratton land transfer. There are several maps on the RSU.
I can just,
Dick, can I first assume that you're making a motion to move forward with Stratton Land?
Yes.
Great, thank you. In a second? Ben?
yeah, I just wanted to say that it had just stalled in process and it had been quite a long time, so I just wanted to make sure, as it's picked up again, that you're okay with us continuing to move forward. That's all I'm looking for. I just felt like enough time had passed that I should resurface it for you.
Any further questions? Yes.
I was just,
Jeff?
to be clear, is it to move forward, to continue negotiations? Is that what it is? Just to continue
Yes.
negotiations?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, gotcha.
It's just the process of acquiring it.
Yeah, yeah.
We considered it in January or something.
I have no further questions. All those in favor of moving forward with the Stratton land transfer conversation, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any nays or abstentions? Seeing none, that will also pass. Let's see.
It's Randy's discussion.
Distribution, impact of loss of federal funds. Randy, would you like to speak?
Yeah, I just felt like it was important for the board to have a sense, since there's been so much discussion at the federal and state level about the elimination of Title I migrant, Title II, Title III, Title IV funds, that you had a sense of where we stood as a system, so it's distribution informational for you. So you had a sense of where things are falling. We've decided to not fill unfilled positions right now because we know we don't have the funding for it. And you can see, I think everything's pretty well explained here, so if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Any questions or clarification? Nope, and that's just a discussion, so we won't be voting on that. I think we can move on to governance process and action to approve policy D8. Did you want to make a motion?
I move to approve policy D8 mandated by the state legislature, so we don't really have an option to revise it or object to it. We need by July 31st to approve it, or bad things evidently will happen unspecified.
Do I have a second to that motion? Ben, thank you.
Can I just make a comment?
Yes,
No.
please.
So this hits, Lisa Giotti had asked about this policy at the last meeting, and I said that it was not mandatory because I didn't realize it was. I think a lot of things happened between then and here, and so it is mandatory. I just wanted to clarify that with you. So we are required, and we are updating our procedure for selection of materials so that the process we had already been using in our system procedurally is aligned with the procedure here, so that will also be posted over the summer. Okay.
Thank you. Okay, let's call for a vote. All of those in favor of approving the mandatory policy D8, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? I'm going to assume that passed unanimously. Adopt revised transportation policy. Would somebody like to make a motion?
I would like to make a motion to adopt the revised transportation policy that we approved at the last meeting, and it met everybody's objections. So I hope the vote is, once again, unanimous.
Great. Can I get a second for that?
Sure.
Kelsey.
David could take it.
That's all right.
No, you take it. It's fine.
No, David's going to take the next one. I already wrote it down. Any further discussion on this? Again, this is the adoption because we have voted on it once, as Dick was mentioned. All those in favor of approving or adopting the revised transportation policy, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Any abstentions? No, again, unanimously. Yes, go
I
ahead.
move to adopt the revised policy 2.7, compensation and benefits, that we approved last meeting.
Second.
Great, thank you, David. Is a second? Any conversation, discussion, questions? Again, this is the adoption of a previously approved, so it should be simple. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Seeing none, that will pass unanimously. Monitoring policies 3.0, 3.3. Those are in our packet. Those are the responses. I'm not looking at the full packet. Are those the responses or yeah, so I would ask you to just review our responses. I forgot to put how many people filled that out.
Something wrong with 3.2.
All.
How was our board response?
All board members responded, it says.
Great.
All board members
All board members responded.
really?
Thank you, guys. Excellent. Nice job. We'll see if we can do that again next month. Item E, we have a tuition request, and Randy, I'd like for you to speak to that before we make the motion, to be clear if that's okay.
So we actually have parents in the audience here, Randy and Kyle Crowfoot lived in Arlington, and I'm going to summarize this, but hopefully I got it correct. Lived in Arlington, bought property and built a home in Sunderland. They have 3 children. They plan on returning to Arlington. They were requesting that initially all 3 children, 2 at the elementary level and 1 in 8th grade, continue to remain in Arlington schools. Through that conversation, I explained that there's a statute that says they can, through 7 through 12, you could approve in extenuating circumstances that like pay for tuition for them for 1 year, for the 8th grade year. I said to them, we haven't had a request like this before. I really wasn't entirely sure where the board would land on it. And I think that really the request now is whether their daughter who's going into 8th grade, whether the district would pay for a year of tuition for her to remain at Arlington to have continuity of programming between 7th and 9th grade, where she'd be staying with her peer group and in the community that she has known for her educational career thus far.
Would anybody like to put a motion on the table so we can further discuss this?
I have a question first.
Sure.
Okay, use one of these.
Sure. It's on.
Yeah, Randy, typically wouldn't you make a decision and this would only come to us if there was an appeal? And this isn't an appeal, right? This is coming to us first. Like, shouldn't this be your decision first and then us? If it's appealed?
The statute does not indicate that the superintendent has any discretion. Any of these requests like this we've brought to the board. We just did the one that came last month as well. So if we want to, I guess, adopt a procedure or do something, we can look into that, but the statute's explicit about it being the board's decision.
Can I add to that? I think the statute's explicit about 7 and 12. When people have come to us in the past, maybe in the elementary level, Randy has been clear about it not being possible, and then they would appeal to the board because it's at the elementary level. I think that's what has happened.
Okay.
Questions, comments? Rick?
I was going to make a motion if that's appropriate.
Yes.
I understand very much because it turned out, my brother-in-law moved out of a very attractive school with schoolmates that he'd been with for all of his school career and was moved in 8th grade to an entirely different city because circumstances moved his parents to Louisville, Kentucky for a significantly improved job. I understand absolutely the importance of continuity, in particular for 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th grade girls in particular, as they go through really an extraordinary time. And I appreciate very much that the plan, if the board approves it, would be to choose to attend Arlington high school, we would still have to pay up to the tuition or the local tuition if she chose to go to Arlington. Given all of that, I move without any conditions or precedents that the Taconic and Green approve the tuition payment for this young lady to go to Arlington, and that the Taconic and Green pay for it.
Second.
So we have a motion on the table by Dick to approve the tuition request, and David has seconded the motion.
It was without precedent or future conditions. Precedent.
Yeah, without precedent.
That we approve. I think this particular case is really unique, and if they built in Sunderland, getting back to the Arlington Middle School is a relatively easy transportation change, and I feel very strongly that continuity of educational experience is really important. And so it's without precedent. So other people could come forward to us, but it would have to be, in my view, very unique. And I believe this is unique.
Thank you, David. Any further questions, comments? Jeff?
Yeah, Randy, what do you see are the implications of approving this, and what are your thoughts on it? I didn't catch the cost. What is the cost to the taxpayers of Manchester, or taxpayers of the district, I should say, for doing this? And
do we know what the tuition is? Sue still on? Sue, do you know the average tuition rate for 8th grade?
Not off the top of my head, but it's going to be around 20,000.
yeah, it's 19.8. My understanding is for
so
FY '26, according to if that's what it is. I don't know if there's some special agreement we could do. But
No, it would be whatever that.
so close to
tuition-
$20,000 the district
Yep.
is paying.
Correct.
And the other thing is, has this ever been done to your knowledge before? My understanding is the general rule is that we educate in a public school system all kids from pre-K through 8. And if they choose to go someplace else, the parents are the ones who pay for going someplace else. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. That's what our operating structure is. I'm not aware of us having ever paid tuition for somebody under circumstances like this within our K-8 system. I would say that I understand and appreciate Dick's points about not being precedent setting. I do think that it is likely that there would be members of our community who wouldn't understand that their situations are not also unique. So I think if the board chooses to make this decision, you would likely receive additional requests based on other people's beliefs of that they also have an unusual situation.
Further questions or comments or clarification around the request? Yes.
Well, I think it's just a slippery slope. I understand totally. I empathize with the parents and their requests, but it's a slippery slope on the board's part as far as approving a request of this nature, especially when we had in a June 5th meeting, I think it was, we denied a request for an individual who wanted to bring their child to, a little different, a private school, but they were actually going to request of the board, I think, less than a $20,000 tuition allocation. So I don't know how we explain it to them and other people who may desire to do this, because I think, as Randy indicated, there may be more than a few who would come forward.
Thank you. I'm not seeing any other further comments or questions. Jim, unless you have something else you'd like to add? Just wave me off if you're good. Okay. I guess then I'll call for a vote. The motion on the table is to approve the tuition request for Arlington Memorial Middle School without precedence. All of those in favor, please signify by saying aye or raising your hand. Do you want me to call out names or, okay. I have David, Lindsay, Rogan, and Dick in favor. All of those opposed, please signify by saying no. Jeff and John and Ben and Jim are a nay. That's 4, and then should I presume we have an abstention?
I got a quorum? No.
And then,
A tie
further
vote,
nay vote.
the motion does not pass.
It is no longer a tie vote.
Okay.
So I believe it's 5 to 4, and I only vote in the case of a tie, but we have 9 voters, so I'm safe.
5 to 4 to approve it.
5 to 4 to deny.
Oh, okay.
To not approve. Is that right, Don? I want to make sure I'm saying this right. Okay. Okay. So, regretfully, and I'm sorry, but the motion does not pass, and we.
Can we change anybody's decision? We've been really stressed out about this all year. We're really, really hoping for this to go through.
She's in an accelerated program in Arlington. You guys don't offer that here. And to go here for 1 year, to go right back to Arlington, you actually taxpayers in both towns, Arlington and Sunderland, and to send her to another school for 1 year to come back is utterly ridiculous. Just.
I understand, and I, like I said, I apologize. That
Can
is.
we please, just one more voter, just pitch in for us?
She's a really shy, reserved kid. Like, to send her to the school that not knowing a single person.
I mean, I guess the only thing I could recommend is that if you follow through, I'm sorry, I guess I'm going to say follow through. If there is another reason, and we have done this in the past, but if there is a specific reason that is, I guess, verifiable, that it would be a detriment to her education, and typically that has looked like a 504 plan or IEP plans that we cannot follow through on. So it would need to be.
She's an accelerated. She's
Yeah.
any of that stuff.
Right.
Accelerated programs in Manchester.
And yeah, I think that's all I can say. If you want to follow up with Randy and see if there's another step in the process.
We can't even pay tuition if we wanted to. We've asked.
Right.
That's.
I'm sorry. I think the next step in the process would be to go to the state board. Is that such a thing? Can you pull me up?
Yeah, the statute says that judgment of the board should be final in regard to the institution the students may attend at public cost. So I'm not seeing, I will look into it, but right now I'm not seeing an appeal process here. But I will follow up and see if there's anything there's more that I don't have here.
There's nothing you can do over here to change anybody's mind.
Go ahead, Jim.
Manchester Memorial Middle School does have accelerated programs. My strong suggestion, given the vote, which was very close, it's not usually close to that, but it's very close, and ultimately the majority voted on the possibility of precedent. Those who were in favor voted in a slightly different venue. But we have superior advanced classes at Manchester Memorial Middle School. And because she's a smart young lady, she can overcome some of the shyness.
To go back to Arlington, that makes no sense. She's
Well,
graduating.
I articulate, but my strong suggestion is work with Randy's staff to make what looks like a done deal at this particular point the best possible outcome that it can be done.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm sorry.
Thank you.
Item F, distribution of the work plan, which is in your packet, my own.
Next meeting.
Are there any questions, comments, or revisions people see that need to be made to the work plan? Lindsay?
One of the things I wanted to add at some point that I brought up before was discussion of increase in stipend. And I think we had to do that at the retreat. Is that what I was told last time? That was the best time?
I don't remember.
I don't.
There were 2 meetings that we scheduled. One on the 5th, which is the retreat, which has been designed, and the other is an April 12th meeting.
August.
Which is
we're
down
almost there.
on the agenda in terms of establishing the next meetings. And part of the reason for the 5th and having a board retreat is that there are enough board members who don't really know each other very well. And it's been a long time as a board that condition has existed. It's been very rare that maybe only 1 or 2. So,
Dick, I'm sorry to cut you off, but in the effort of time, to get to the point, if you want to add a discussion around the stipend, is that something that you would like to add maybe to the retreat or to a later date?
I can't remember what Sue said. I thought she said we had to talk about it at a certain point because of the budgeting drafting.
Which would mean this
But I don't know
summer,
if it
fall.
has to be at the retreat. I just want it somewhere on there, but I don't remember exactly.
I say, how about,
I don't care when, you guys can figure that
Yeah,
out, but I just
let's
wasn't sure if
discuss.
we had to put it on for the retreat or
I'll
not.
see if we can get it on the retreat. We have a fun day planned. So, it's only in the beginning, stages of planning, so I don't see any big reason why we couldn't do that. So I'm gonna just propose that we add it to the retreat, and then if we can't do that, then Randy will tell us that, and we'll add it to the work plan somewhere else.
Okay.
All right, so we added to the work plan a discussion on increasing stipend for the August retreat.
That's a good question.
And
Melanie, I'm sorry, is the retreat at the RSU?
it will be, yes, that was just
Okay.
decided on today.
Okay, thank you.
Air conditioning.
It is air conditioned, Randy left, but I'm pretty sure it's air conditioned over there, right? Yes, the BRSU is air conditioned, right? Okay. Okay, nothing else for the work plan, yes? Yeah.
Well, there were, in Randy's timeline, there were a number of other meetings that were proposed in there, and that's not on our agenda, and it's,
There is one, the next meeting date, August 5th, the very second to last thing, and one is to add a meeting for August 12th, and that is on the agenda last.
We'll talk about that in the
Second to
retreat.
last item.
We'll talk about what you're talking about in the retreat.
In about 3 seconds. And Ben, I just realized we didn't really talk about the timeline in that discussion. But I think maybe we can talk about the timeline when we discuss August 12th.
Retreat, yeah, or retreat.
Or the retreat, okay. Any other future agenda items? We kind of covered that with a work plan. We have another section for public comment, which I would be uncomfortable not including in here. Brian, anything you want to say? Anybody else?
Thanks for staying. Anybody, I don't know about anybody online.
Yeah, anybody online have any comments? Okay. Public comment, done. Board self-evaluation, I, again, have been really terrible at looking through these, but it is part of what we have just agreed upon as a board, that we will all fill out the board self-evaluation form. I asked it get printed out so that we're not using the online form tonight, so that hopefully you can print it. I mean, you can fill it out right here and right now. If you don't have a printed form, I have it, and I will collect it. And then the last item is our next meeting dates. Right now, we're set for August 5th. That is a retreat from 10 to 3 o'clock. And that is at the BRSU, confirmed today? Yes. And then the other item on here, before you guys get too distracted filling that out. Yeah. Before we get too distracted filling out our forms. Our last action item is to add a meeting for August 12th at 6:30. Does, Randy, do you want to speak to that? Or I think we should probably make an explanation as to.
Yeah,
if you need a motion,
You're moving the motion, yes, thank you.
that the 5th and the 12th be as designated here.
Second the motion to add meeting for August 12th.
6:30?
Are you looking for
If
second?
nobody, yes, okay. I'll say if nobody seconds it, we're doing it.
Of August.
No,
Lindsay.
Okay, Randy, could you walk us through the thinking on this, please?
the thinking was so much different before this very long and fairly emotional meeting. The question was whether or not we wanted to come together again on August 12th to discuss transition, or whether we want to wait until September. So the proposal of September 12th was mostly because of my calendar and I want to come prepared. We can do it, or we can wait until the regular September meeting and just do the retreat on the 5th. I'm really okay either way, if I'm being honest with you right now.
Is there any room in our retreat agenda to discuss that process, or is that not happening at all?
Discuss the timeline? Or
Yeah,
discuss?
reconfiguration plan, or the transition plan.
I mean, I think what I would say to that is, even though the retreat is a public meeting by law, we don't anticipate there being a lot of public there for the retreat. And the transition plan, could we discuss it at the retreat? Sure, but I would be hesitant to call for a vote at the retreat.
Sure. I was thinking the same thing, but discussion, it may be a chance for us as a board to have some, to grapple with and try to surface where people's issues are as we understand from the public.
Yeah, is there any reason that we couldn't do that, Randy, or
No,
David? I don't think so.
just a conversation, like an activity about it.
Great, okay.
I was just gonna piggyback off Ben, can we, after the retreat, go into a public meeting to discuss it, since we're all gonna be there? Because haven't we done that before, where we've?
Yeah. So, the challenge is me being prepared for that. I have 1 week of vacation next week, and I really need it. And I'm just being really honest. To prepare for that meeting on the 5th would mean that. And if you as a board want to do that, I will be as prepared as I can be. But I guess I'm just being honest with you about that.
So maybe talking about our hopes and our thoughts about it might help frame what you would have prepared for us in September.
Yeah, and I've got proposals. They're just not all totally fleshed out. And part of what was going to happen today was, what happened today was going to inform that. So it definitely needs some more work. But it is really up to you. I do think that there can be, and probably should be, a conversation with the board about what happens between now and, where we go. But whether it's a meeting or not that day, I guess that's up to you. Really, it is up to you.
Thoughts from the board on this?
It's consistent with the plan of the retreat. If you look at the objective of what we agreed to as the board retreat, absolutely transition stuff and what we are planning to do as a board and how we're going to do it, how we're going to manage it, is all part of getting to know each other and trust each other a lot better.
Do you feel strongly that we need an August 12th meeting additionally, or do you think if we workshop it?
There's business to be conducted, which shouldn't take that long, but I'm prepared for both, or the either choice.
Folks, do we want to flesh it out more? Go ahead and vote. Same votes. All of those in favor, yeah.
Let's review this for a second.
I mean, I already know I'm not available on the 12th. It's just too short notice, so
Okay.
I can vote no based on my availability, or I can say yes, but I won't be there, so.
Maybe I can ask, how many of us know that we cannot be here on the 12th?
That's a lot.
1, 2, 3.
Depends on the location and how far we have to travel.
Okay.
I have something until 6.
Could we hold it Zoom?
Yeah, do it here.
What?
Could we do
I'm
it
gonna
Zoom?
be here. I have a kid doing a thing.
Oh, no. Well, yeah, but I mean, I think it's up to you. If you want to shoot for the 5th, we can shoot for the 5th, or we can just wait for the
Randy,
September
it
meeting.
gives the architect more time to flesh out more stuff, give us more presentation, since I know you desperately need a vacation, I don't want to put any more stress on you. So let's cancel the 12th, meet on the 5th, and anything towards the end of the day that makes sense, consistent with the plan of the day.
So Dick, would you like to withdraw the motion, or should we vote on the motion?
I'll withdraw it.
Great. Okay, so final
for adjournment.
motion to adjourn by Dick Dale. Thank you.
Thanks for nominating.
Second.
Third.
Second was Jess Wilson.
Oh, this was Emma's first meeting.
It's pretty dangerous to put us together.
It is.
It's very dangerous.